Hey guys, join us every Friday night at midnight for Midnight Spook House Live, where we talk about the paranormal, including UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and everything else that goes bump in the night.
And every other Wednesday, we have 2 different shows, I'll Podcast on Your Grave, where we discuss horror, and Retro After Dark, where we discuss everything from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
For more details and showtimes, visit midnightspookhouse.com.
Mass UFO sighting.
Now, this creature is said to prowl the swamps.
Everything is alive.
Becomes more transparent and then finally disappears.
They're a lot closer than we've been thinking. And a happy Friday night to everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am Dale, and with me, Ryan. How you doing?
Doing good. It's a hot one.
It is another hot one. Summer in the South, man.
That's right.
Yeah. So, what do you think about the moon landing? You believe the stories? Or is it too early to talk about? I'm always trying to get to it right at the start, aren't I? Yeah. So we're going to talk about the moon landing and what there's a story about it. All right. I'm sidetracking again. We've actually been planning to do this one for a while, so I'm pretty excited, and that's the point. A terrible joke, but a point nonetheless. And what makes up an alien? I guess we don't really know, but we have some ideas, and that's kind of what the show's about tonight. What's going on with the moon and what's going on inside aliens. So, yeah, it ought to be a fun one.
What is going on with the moon? Are they in on it together?
Yeah, I think they are.
Some would believe so.
Yeah, well, that's actually true, and that's that may come up later in the show. So I want to apologize. There was a little break in there after the music on the pre-show. Actually, I just system freeze. As with every single show we do every single week, it throws me a little bit off. Something has to go a little bit wrong, and I swear it was before we did the Men in Black show, wasn't it? This has been for like the entire stint of the show.
I'm still waiting on them to come knock on my door.
Yeah,
for saying too much.
Yeah, we're trying to get shut down.
I did. This is completely unrelated, but I did hear of a recent sighting of them.
Ooh, oh, is that right? Okay, is that in the news or is that just something you can tell us now?
That's just something I can tell us
all right.
Now, because I don't know any of the details where it happened or anything. So it's something I'm going to do some more research on. But through one of my social media accounts, I saw where somebody snapped a photo of these gentlemen leaving a neighborhood, all dressed in black, and incidentally, all the same height and build, and were oddly pale and featureless, I guess they could say.
Huh.
They kind of strange faces. But apparently they had gone to see a neighbor. But the neighbor wouldn't divulge, what that meeting was about or anything.
Well, that sounds fairly familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, but somebody snapped a photo of these guys leaving the neighborhood, and it was it's a little eerie,
Yeah. So where is this photo, if I may ask?
I'll try to find it. Like I said, it was just kind of scrolling through my Twitter feed. And I should have grabbed it, but I'm sure I can dig back through and try to find it again.
I think that's definitely worthwhile.
You don't see like 4 or 5 guys wearing the exact same, black suit and the same black hat, and
right, unless it's a baseball team, but they don't wear suits, so
right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I look forward to seeing that picture. So definitely send it to me. Put it on the site for everybody, whatever you want to do, but I want to see it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I actually have a ton of news this week. It has been quite the busy one. Some of it relevant, some of it not. But I'll go ahead and let you go first. I don't think you have nearly as many stories as me because I just went crazy with it. So you go right ahead.
No, actually, my story was actually just related to the moon, and was
that's
kind of
really nice.
Reason I thought we should go ahead and do our moon discussion episode.
Sure.
Yesterday was the 48th anniversary of the moon landing itself.
Wow. Okay.
So if you were around in 1969. Chances are you were probably watching it live on TV.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a pretty big deal. Yeah, just a little thing, like leaving the Earth and visiting another celestial body.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing. You hear about it a little bit now, but I mean, even now, it's still like, wow, that's awesome. When they go do anything.
Yeah, I know we've got the rovers on Mars and everything, and we've sent probes to all kinds of different bodies in the universe. But I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson that said, you don't have a parade for a robot.
That's true.
Or a rover. There's they find all kinds of wonderful, fascinating scientific data for us, but there's no danger there, other than the possibility of us, losing millions of taxpayer dollars if the thing crashes or breaks down or
right.
something.
Yeah, that's true.
But so we've got these things out there, but what have we really done that spectacular since sending a man, that far out to the surface of the moon?
Sure, yeah, like you said, we've got lots of data. They've learned a lot, but at the same time, the human element, we don't do that much. So that's cool. Yeah.
So hopefully the human element is something that we'll see interjected back into our investigations with Mars in the near future, or within our lifetimes at least.
Yeah, that's the hope, I think.
They say, within the next 20 years we should have a manned mission to Mars, and hopefully that will excite people for the stars and the galaxy again,
Yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think people really, it's kind of interesting, I guess, but nobody's really excited for that anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't think anybody, what am I trying to say? That nobody really wonder, like, what can we do?
Yeah, it's that it's that innocence of the child to want to actually go accomplish something amazing like that. Yeah, it's like that's gone.
That's really a shame, because I think in our hearts and our souls we're an exploring race. Man wasn't meant to sit still and just accept the reality around him.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons we do this show.
That's it. Yeah. Don't be content.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
question everything. And wonder what you can do.
I've got a lot of news that are going to kind of pose a bunch of those questions, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's have that laid on me.
All right. Well, let's start with some alien things. How about that? Because
that's always fun.
Yeah, that's a favorite.
I was always down for that.
Scientists have come up with a way to scan the skies for pulses of light from an alien civilization. The SETI Institute, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has been attempting to determine whether or not we are alone in the universe for more than 30 years now, but sadly, despite its best efforts, has yet to find any evidence to suggest there's anyone out there. One of the reasons for this scientists say could be that we're looking for the wrong thing, which is kind of my thought. Now, what is a sufficiently advanced civilization? What if a sufficiently advanced civilization, having spotted our planet through their telescopes, were pinging us with some sort of pulses of light? Conventional telescopes are unable to pick up such things, meaning we would never see them. But now, in an effort to account for such a possibility, they set up a new type of instrument designed exactly for that, and it's known as laser SETI, and it is currently under development. So, and I should say it's seeking supporters. I don't know who can actually support it, but check that out. And I don't know, do you think that's worthwhile, or?
Right on, because I think that scanning for radio waves and like radio transmissions, I always wondered if that, because if you're looking for a civilization that, I guess if they're like us, that makes sense to look for radio broadcasts, but you're leaving out the possible civilizations that are, far beyond us technologically.
That's
especially
true.
if you're interested in those that could potentially travel to our galaxy. If you're after those gray aliens that can somehow traverse the universe easily, do you think they're using radio waves to communicate anymore?
Right. You have to wonder. You do.
Because if you look into faster than light travel, and using quantum theory to like bend the universe and to cut down space time and all,
right.
Like if you have that much mastery over the quantum realm, I would imagine that you probably use that same technology to send data.
Yeah.
Probably, if they listen to the radio and their UFOs, it's probably the same thing. I'm going to tune into this station.
Yeah, it's not, top 40.
To the Milky Way. Yeah.
Well, I think you got to look at it sort of like they have the car. They're probably just going to drive to the store. Why hail a cab or, send out smoke signals to have a ship come pick you up whenever you can just hop in your car and go. That's just kind of how I feel about it. No, I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, but I hope, if it does come to fruition, that it can give us more.
But I absolutely think that we need to, I guess, broaden our what's the term? Like broaden our net, I guess.
Yeah,
we're gonna catch all these different methods of communication.
Right.
Or I think scanning for light is probably the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sound thing has been kind of cool with the WOW, but then here we are with some information signal about that. Yeah, the dude signal,
which is dead.
Right, unfortunately, folks. If you haven't heard, listen back a few episodes ago, and we killed yet another one. We didn't. We just reported that it was dead. We're like the obituary in the paper the next morning, So
guess what? This fun thing you believed.
That's what we do. Well, here's one that's pretty cool. The space agency has discovered all the crucial ingredients for life in the oceans of Saturn's icy moon. During a press conference held, NASA scientists have revealed the discovery of a molecular hydrogen in jets of water erupting from deep beneath the surface of Enceladus. Molecular hydrogen is important because on Earth it provides energy for entire ecosystems such as those living under hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the sea. Such creatures eat the hydrogen and release methane, a gas that has also been found on Enceladus. If I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. Enceladus. Enceladus?
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Okay. We know there's not only a warm, wet environment, we now realize there's food for life, said astrobiologist Lewis Dartnell. There's fuel for an ecosystem. So, could there really be extraterrestrial life living in the depths of Saturn's icy moon? I say probably not, but it's kind of cool. It's one of those that I report, not because I'm a huge believer in that, but it's neat.
I think that until we sent some kind of probe or, yet again, one of those, I was about to say rover, but would you send like a, in my head, I'm envisioning this like, okay, it starts out as a rover. It's got like a drill on it and it drills a hole and then it transforms into a submarine.
We're going to send some transformers up there. That's what's going to happen.
We need masks.
Well, if it's wet, we just need to make sure to put floaties on it. What's that?
That show Mask.
I do, of course.
The transforming trucks.
Yes.
We're going to hire them to make a rover for this mission. Anyway, what I was getting at, until we send something to go like look and analyze that, I don't think there's any way to call it either way. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, there has to be, they just named all the ingredients there, but I think the possibility is neat.
Right, yeah, I think, that's it.
Like they said, the ingredients are there, so it's cool that it could be.
Yeah.
What if? Maybe in our lifetime when we can afford to send something up there, we'll find out for sure.
How many million was it to go to what, a round trip to space? 100 million per person, was it?
Yeah.
We're still collecting for that. We have the tip jar.
We set up our GoFundMe page.
We put in the first $1 so it looks like someone cared. All right, so let's move on. Now, this one's fun. I promised some fun, and I wouldn't lie about it. Witness report. Important words. I shot this video from my backyard in the Summerlin area of Las Vegas, Nevada on the night of November 15th, 2016. I realize that's a little dated, but this one was new to me. It was new on other sites, so I thought it might be new to others. It's been a strange few months here in Las Vegas. Last month was the hottest June ever recorded, and we had windy days that went along with it. After more than 3 years of going out every single chance I had for hours on end, I found that I had hit somewhat of a wall and was just tired and unwilling to try and keep the kind of pace any longer. All work and no play is not a good thing, so I slowed down. Actually, I didn't really have much choice but to slow down anyway because of the hellish weather. Anyway, I definitely found time to relax and to even quit smoking. This one-of-a-kind video taken over the Nellis Air Force Base has never had one filmed just like it. There's definitely UFOs, but it's not up for debate. They're 100% genuine. Now, I know this sounds silly, but I want you to see the pictures and the videos. That's the reason I bring this to the table. It looks really compelling. So, yeah, I'm going to put that up. It's your typical, well, there's lights in the sky, they're going to say it's this because it's near an Air Force base. But I say, after all these years, and I guess maybe this is the reason I brought this up too, subconsciously, not everything is as it seems. They always dismiss it. But where would you go if you were going to, let's say you wanted to learn about Mars, or you even wanted to invade Mars? Would you just go hang out in the suburbs, or would you go to the places where the information and possibly the danger was?
Right.
So I wanted to bring this up basically for that, because I think that's going to be a topic we need to do very soon. And it's UFO-y, so I'm always going to go for the UFO topics. You know how that goes. They're fun. All right, so I want you guys to see this video. We'll put it on the side after the show. And it's titled 3 UFOs Land at or Near Nellis Air Force Base. It's wild. It is. It's one of the best I've seen in a long time. So
I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. Well, I hope that, I don't oversell it. It's always a fear, but I think it's really neat, and I want everybody to see it. And chime in, write us, an email or something, and tell us what you thought of it, or just hop in chat and be vocal about it. It's all good. I'm going to go ahead and transition out of that one, because that's it. I just wanted to bring it up because subconsciously, stop dismissing everything, everyone. This could be legit. Maybe it's not, but let us search on. All right. So now this one is,
what if?
Yeah. Here's another mystery of history, most likely put to rest. So do you know about the Bigsby letter, Ryan?
Repeat that. You kind of cut out for a second.
I'm sorry about that. Okay. Do you know about the mystery of Abe Lincoln's Bigsby letter?
No. Enlighten me.
All right.
You said the Biggie letter. The Biggie letter.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Biggie and Tupac feud on the next half of the show. No, we're not. We're not ever. Okay. So, forensic linguists have almost certainly determined who really wrote the famous Civil War era letter. The Bigsby letter, as it has become known, was a letter sent in 1864 to Boston resident Lydia Bixby, who was grieving over the death of all 5 of her sons from the American Civil War. You can't even imagine what that would have been like, obviously, right? She says, the letter says, let me backtrack. The letter says, I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. The letter stated, see, that's why I did that. But I cannot refrain from tendering you the consolation that may be found in the thanks and the republic they died to save. I'm sorry. That is the way I wrote it down. I wrote it poorly. But did Abraham Lincoln actually write this letter? Now there's where the mystery came in. Forever up until now, there was a good chance we thought that Abraham Lincoln wrote this letter to this grieving lady, which would be huge, because this day and age, there's no personal touch. There's no, I'm truly sorry. Your loss is appreciated. Is there anything we can do? I don't want to get political, but I think a lot of the times we don't slow down and appreciate those who fight for us quite enough. So let's all do that more. Now, while the letter was indeed signed in the president's name, many believe that it was actually written by a secretary. Again, the mystery. Now, in a new bid to solve this mystery once and for all, forensic linguists from the University of Manchester and Aston University applied a cutting-edge analysis method known as engram tracing, which works by searching for linguistic sequences in a person's writing. By using a computer to analyze hundreds of examples of writing from both Lincoln and Hay, the team was able to determine that the famous letter was most likely written by Hay, not the president himself. Most of what we see in the Bixby letter is found in the writing of Hay, but not in Lincoln, said English language and linguistics lecturer Dr. Andrea Nini. So that's not like one of those mysteries that I think was completely infamous and even that important. But I'm always sad to see another one go, man. Why is that?
Well, even though it wasn't Abe's writing, I think it's interesting that we were able to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool, right?
Says. But,
once you can answer things and you still have things left, there's your paranormal realm. When you run out of answers, and I guess we have to, every once in a while, clear the table for some of them. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're in it to just blindly believe, without the chance of things being disproven,
right.
You're in it for the wrong reason.
That's true. Absolutely. We're not here to blindly believe these things, right? We're here to learn something, hopefully.
I did think my star child was really cool, and I had to mourn that for a bit, but
right.
At the end of the day, I'm glad we know for certain.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You just kind of have to chalk it up and be like, well, it sucks either way. It would have sucked for the alien or the child that it turned out to be, but the mystery was great, and I think that left a legacy for that child who passed much too young. So there's something, right. I guess, right?
Absolutely.
All right, now let's get let me see here. I've got these out of order. All right, let's get a little bit silly after this one. Let's do one more. This is a study. This might be a better topic. Yeah, let's just skip this one onto the fun stuff. All right, so top U.S. general warns against killer robots. General Paul Selva has spoken out about the dangers of creating fully autonomous weapon systems. Now, this is something I think we've all considered when we watch things like The Terminator and things like that. So the risk of giving... I was
going to say, what is that movie?
The risk of giving autonomy to so-called killer machines been highlighted time and again over the years in movies such as The Terminator and The Matrix. I actually didn't read that ahead. I was just slick enough to do that on my own. But could an intelligent computer ever truly decide that humanity is a threat and attempt to wipe us off the planet? RoboCop kind of does that, touches on that a little bit. All right, now, during a recent Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, U.S. General Paul Selva expressed how important it was to maintain human control over systems capable of killing people, lest we unleash on humanity a set of robots that we don't know how to control. I don't think it's reasonable for us to put robots in charge of whether or not we take a human life, he said. There will be a debate in the department about whether or not we take humans out of the decision to take lethal actions. It's a concern that has been brought up many times by Elon Musk, who has warned that intelligent machines represent a fundamental risk to the existence of civilization. This is sounding like a show in the future. I have access to the very most cutting-edge AI, and I think people should really be concerned about it, he said. AI is in a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive, because I think by the time we react, it's too late. I agree with that.
I would agree with that.
Absolutely. That's one of those, you don't mess around with that. But I don't know. I mean, what else do you really say about that? It's like, please, government, don't do this. I mean, they're going to do what they want, right?
Well, I would hope that in our quest for AI, as we think of it in the science fiction realm, I would hope that we would use it for other reasons rather than straight on to the military application of it.
Yeah.
Like let's have an AI be meter maid for a while. See how they do
until he loses it like a normal person does. So
now, wasn't it in? I think in Japan they have the first fully automated police officers on duty now.
Mm-hmm.
And
the waiters, I saw that.
They're not like Ed 209 or anything like that.
Yeah, Dark Falls mentions that Ed 209.
Oh, I see that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not do Ed 209 quite yet, or ever, really.
Or ever. Yeah, I can agree with
that. These are more like they patrol the streets, and if they see suspicious activity, they will, send an automated report to human police officers to intervene. It also has a kiosk on its body, like a touchscreen interface where you can approach the officer and make reports that way as well. So I think that's kind of a safer application than, let's go ahead and activate Skynet. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Skyline?
Skyline. I absolutely agree. We don't need to play with fire on that sort of things because it could so easily go wrong. Just way too easy. Now, guess what, though? There's a story that perfectly goes with this one, and I found them at very different times, but this will continue if you have more to say. Now, let's say that it were to happen, and they were to become sort of human-like and decide, you know what, screw these people, I'm not working here anymore, and they go all homicidal. Well, consider this as well on the other side of that. A new security robot brought in to help monitor an office in Washington, D.C., ended up committing suicide. The Nightscope K5 security robot, which looks a bit like something out of a Star Wars movie, managed to prematurely end its own existence this week by going straight into a fountain. They say, our DC office building got a security robot. And this comes from Bilal Farouki, who wrote on Twitter, it drowned itself. We were promised flying cars, and instead, we've got suicidal robots. An image of the contraption lying helpless in the water has gone viral online, if you haven't seen it. It was developed by California-based company Nightscope, and this particular line of robots comes equipped with an array of special cameras designed to help out security personnel. Sadly, none of these appear to have helped this situation, and it met its untimely watery end. So, is that the flip side? Or is that just proof of a malfunction that could do what it wants and maybe end up tragic?
So I guess my question there was this an accident? Like, did it somehow just like not see the water and went where it shouldn't have? Or
if that's the case, to me, it's scarier than anything.
Or did it actually decide, like, who am I? Like, is this my existence?
This sucks. Is this working in this building? Sucks. Yeah.
So, I don't know.
What do you say? I don't know. We always end up there. It's like, oh, I don't know, but you really don't. Like, I want more insight into its mind on that. Surely, they can, I don't know, check the data, kind of see what happens, find an error log, like what caused it. But that's where you are walking that fine line of, will it become so humanized that it's like, I can't take this anymore and destructs itself, or something goes wrong and it hurts others? Isn't that human already, where the brain can do that? It's almost robotic in its own right. So we're just creating a much more dangerous population, really. I don't like it.
I mean, they say that you can break down the human intelligence into, a set of if-then statements.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a computer program would work. And even if you say, like, oh, I'm going to do this randomly, I'm going to go jump in the pool with all my clothes on.
Yeah.
Even a random action like that, if you break it down, like, you perform that action because you were trying to be random,
Right.
So I don't know. I might be getting A little off base there.
Well, no, I think you're just saying, though, can you ever go against the program, or is the program itself self-destructive eventually? Like, yeah, I mean, it's the human psychology. I don't think anybody really gets it. And would robots at a certain point have that same sort of thing? I don't know. It's scary to think about. I hope not.
Yeah, to the point I was making, Dark Falls says the human brain essentially uses binary.
Absolutely.
You know.
So we're not that different, robots and us.
So I think it's going to be interesting if we ever achieve that. You know, the person you are now,
mm-hmm.
it was kind of crafted by the morality taught to you by your parents or your caregivers or whoever raised you.
Right.
You know, you're kind of conditioned by those standards. That's where people can argue that's where your morality comes from.
Mm-hmm. So
I guess the question I'm bringing up is, if you create a brilliant intelligence, you know, this is essentially a new life, and it knows pretty much everything there is to know and everything. However, it was created in an instance, you know, without those years of conditioned learning for morality and everything. Where does its morality come from then, you know?
Right. Does it come from its creator? Because you kind of gain it, as you said, through experience of life. You decide, you mold. Like, does it just come from its creator, or is it just a mold of, or does it even have morality, I guess, at some point? I don't know. Does it gain morality over time? Like, I don't know.
If you look at someone with sociopathic tendencies, like, you can tell them, you know, you shouldn't kill someone because that's wrong. And, but if they lack that empathy to understand that, you know, they might not kill someone because they know, oh, it's against the law and, you know, there will be consequences of that. But will they understand that on an empathetic level?
Right. Will they really feel that? Will they really understand that? Yeah.
So you can, as the programmer or the creator of this AI, you can implement certain things like that. You know, killing is wrong, you know, violence, you know, randomized violence is wrong. You shouldn't do that. You know, you can put those parameters in, but, you know, you've got to ask the question, without those years of conditioning, will it does it have the empathy to understand why those things are wrong beyond, you know, oh, it's against the law to do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You can you can put rules down. You can build a fence around an animal, but eventually it may outgrow it. And then what? And I think that's the thing you and I talk about sometimes, is people don't see beyond today. I think that's a lot of the reason we're in more of a selfish world than we used to be, is it's about today, and they don't worry about the consequences of, you know, spending all your money, I don't know, on Monday, you know, not worrying about Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, for example. Is that going to kind of come into play? I don't know where to go with that. I think we need to definitely make a show out of it, though.
Yeah, let's
take on artificial intelligence.
Because there's so many gray areas, and the biggest question that needs to be answered before we kind of dive head on into creating something, because essentially, to me, if you're talking about AI in the sense of you know, how we knew it in the science fiction realm, you know, you're essentially creating new life,
right?
Now, is it you can argue, well, no, it's still a machine, but what makes you or I, you know, alive and conscious, you know?
Well, I mean, take the example of video games. They've learned to adapt and to play against the person in algorithms, you know, that it's become honestly very human and scary to play against the computer. Now, you remember when we were growing up, you would play, I don't know, like even games like Street Fighter 2, for example, and Mortal Kombat, they were random, but they weren't so much, oh, well, this human's doing this over and over. And it just seems like they're getting a little closer, just a little closer, where it feels more like playing someone than the computer.
Right.
And that could potentially continue, but I don't know. Where is that line where it eventually does become bigger than robotics versus humans? And it just is. And have we gone too far? I think we're definitely going to have to take that on.
Yeah, then there's so much to explore there, because then you have to, if we classify this as life, are we enslaving this new life by, limiting its body to service worker work?
Yeah.
And, we're saying, this is your purpose. This is all you can ever be,
It already is starting to sound like American history in ways, well, not just American, because, in Egypt, there were slaves who built things, obviously. It goes way back, and it sounds similar.
Yeah. So are you making the same mistakes of the past?
Right. Are we doing the same thing over? Are we doing, as they say, playing God? Are we? I don't know, but that's a show, and we're going to have to take that on. So, since we have another show for the night, I've got two more stories, and they're both not going to be talk pieces so much. They're just, they're just news. All right, so 19-year-old, now this is cool. This is paranormal for sure, supernatural, whatever. 19-year-old Rosa Dominguez struck it rich, not once, but twice after buying two $5 tickets in June. For most people, winning the lottery is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, but for one lucky teenage girl recently, two tickets from separate gas stations both managed to yield life-changing results. The first, which she purchased in San Luis Obispo County, netted $555,555, while the second, which she bought in Monterey County a few days later, $100,000. She told local lottery officials, "I was so nervous I just wanted to cry." I'm going to say I would have done something against my will before cry, probably. I would have had to find a bathroom. But how do you do that? Like, you hear about it, the odds are what? Like, astronomical for two. They have to be to win twice.
I don't even know. Like,
what do you even say about that?
Yeah. I wish it were me.
Yeah, that's about all you can say. But it does make you think, like, what's happening in the universe that this girl wins twice? Was there some blip that says, oh, it hiccuped and it just happened again? I don't know. I don't think it's supernatural, but that's not normal. So have that. Now, here's another one that you can just have. I heard this one on another show, and it's hilarious. So here we go. A family in South Florida were left perplexed this week after their house was hit by bags. I gotta sneeze. Of frozen meat.
What?
This peculiar incident, which occurred in the city of Deerfield Beach on Saturday morning, saw 15 pounds of Italian sausage plummet from the heavens and land on top of their house. It was like thunder, and it awakened me out of sleep, said homeowner Travis Adair. We got up, found 2 packages of sausage on our yard, and then we were like, okay, well, got to go on the roof and check and see if we find more of this stuff. Now, to add to the mystery, the sausage has been contained inside bags bearing the name of an Alabama-based land clearing firm called William Land Service. He says, I called him, and the guy had no idea what I was talking about and probably thought I was crazy. The family suggested they might have been dropped from a plane flying overhead. However, it remains unclear why anyone would dump their sausage over the city. I would love to know what happened because it's just so odd, said Austin's mother, Jenny. Why, no, that's not odd at all. It's never happened to you.
So we don't know where this sausage came from.
No, it's mystery sausage. None tastier, mind you.
Would you eat the mystery sausage?
I don't think I would. And it can't be like, my first thought was, when I heard this, I was like, well, if it fell out of a plane, it would have definitely crashed through the house. It seems to me someone just threw sausage at their house.
Why?
I couldn't tell you. But you know what I'm saying? They say if you drop a penny off of a skyscraper, you know, it becomes extremely dangerous. It can kill, you know. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, there have been people killed by icicles forming on airplanes at high altitude.
Right.
And that will pierce, a person or the ground or buildings. Mm-hmm. It's happened. So I don't know about the terminal velocity applied to sausage or
even from a helicopter, I would think. Maybe it was an Amazon drone and someone local ordered some sausage. I don't know what to make of it.
I wonder I wonder if they're in like one of those areas that supports the Amazon drones.
I don't know. Terminal velocity for Penny is like 62 miles an hour. It's insane.
Yeah.
And he said, Dark Falls also says, I'd be worried it was Soylent sausage. Yeah. I don't know what to think. They called the cops, I heard in the story. And the cops were like, I have no idea what to tell you. If that's not supernatural, what's that?
Is there a code for that?
I don't know. Somebody call the IHOP. Maybe they would know better. Because I don't know what's going on with that.
I wonder if wonder what kind of restaurants are around them, If they have like an IHOP or something like that, maybe it was meant for them.
Maybe.
Is that how you get your sausage?
Right?
You toss it out of helicopters at the building.
Yeah, it's cheaper. You save a couple of bucks on shipping that way. They cut you a deal on it, so it's totally better that way. At risk, though, the neighborhood of flying sausage bombs, unfortunately. Well, that's all I've got for the news. I wanted to wrap it up with a fun one, so there we go.
It was definitely a fun one, and perhaps the most mysterious of all of them.
Mookie Mook says, was it for drug trafficking? I bet so. For some reason, I'm imagining Napoleon Dynamite. For some reason, I can just see him and like, why's there sausage on our house? Got pay you. Forgot my checkbook, and I pay you in change. I can't make sense of it. It seems like a Napoleon skit, but I digress. That's all I've got for the news, and I don't really know what else to say anyway. So,
do you know anything about the sausage incident, listeners out there? If you do, write us,
please.
Perhaps you could help solve a mystery.
Yeah, and rewrite history. Anyway. All right. All right. So let's take a quick break and get on to some moon landing conspiracies. If you're good with that, we'll leave the sausage in the past for now.
Sounds good. That's keep me awake at night. All right. Where the mystery meat came from.
Yeah, mystery meat. All right. Well, we'll be right back, folks.
When the object kind of fades out, it's kind of a slow fade, and then it's gone. The object's moving incredibly fast, and then initiated some kind of like cloaking device. It's actually moving towards the space station.
There's a new show in town. It's not your ordinary show. Every other Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, I'll podcast on your grave. Featuring monsters, slashers, ghosts, zombies, and more. So if that's something you're into, join us. Head over to MidnightSpookhouse.com for all the details. Spookhouse Radio.
And we are back. Mookie Mook says the police tested the sausage for drugs and it was tested negative. She actually sent that to me in a private message. So there you go.
So it's legit sausage.
It's legit sausage. That's the weirdest part is there really isn't drugs. This is one of those scenarios where you're like, oh, okay, so it's drug related. Wait, what? No, it's really like pancake sausage. All right. Now I played the promo for I'll procrastinate on your grave. That is kind of the theme for this week though, wasn't it? we did procrastinate on it. Actually, had some goings on this week, and we had to reschedule. I should have mentioned that, but I was actually out of town. We'll try to do that show maybe over the weekend if we can get to it. We lost an amazing man, George Romero, this week, and we need to talk about that some. While it's a good time to honor that, and we're wanting to get a little more simple with the show. We're trying a little too hard, and we're gonna take it back and have fun with it. So, long story short, we'll get to I'll Podcast on Your Grave, the new episode, hopefully over this weekend. And, so that'll be fun.
Sounds good.
All right. So now for tonight, first half of the show, moon landing conspiracies, conspiracy theories, and such. What do you think happened? Was it real or was it staged? Ryan, introduce us, sir.
So as we spoke earlier, very early on in the news, this week was the 48th anniversary of the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent 3 men to the moon. They landed on the moon and walked on the moon.
So they say.
So they say. So this is regarded as historical fact that this actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people that believe that we did not do that. That we did not have the technological capability to achieve this in 1969. And that it would, in fact, be easier to fake in a film studio.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that kind of leads us into the main topic tonight.
Yeah, right.
Let's kind of throw around some of these theories and see what we think. Do they have any legitimacy to them?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. If I may, I have a really cool little write up here. It has a little intro, and then it has the it happened and the it didn't happen separately. Ooh. Now, what I'd like to do is drop one and let you say your piece on it, because I know you kind of have feelings on both sides. Who doesn't? We weren't there. What do we know, right?
Yeah. So
if you'd like, let me intro it, and then I'll let you kind of start with the theories.
Yeah,
is that cool?
Because I've got a whole bunch of the conspiracy theories themselves, and I was just honestly I wasn't sure where to begin.
Uh-huh.
there are a lot about it. So one thing I wanted to ask you though, do we want to disclose what we think now of it, or wait until we discuss all of this? Honestly, I have no idea what you think of it.
Well, that's a good thing.
I don't think we've ever actually talked about this before.
That's right. We're not even friends. We don't talk unless it's a show. That's not true. All right, so let me read this intro, and then I think kind of as we go, it'll probably just come out. Or maybe we'll even kind of change how we feel once we do it a little more. Because when you sit down and you really talk with a friend, it's like, yeah, dude, this is how I feel about it. And then you're like, well, that's compelling. I like your view of it. And then, that goes back to the adapting and the robot discussion, the AI and things.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me just intro this if you don't mind. Normally I wouldn't even try this, but this is it's a really neat little summation. And then we'll get to the theory. So it's the greatest achievement of mankind, but ever since Neil Armstrong became the first man to set foot on the moon in 1969, conspiracy theories have abounded. President Kennedy announced the Apollo program in 1961, vowing to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Now, after years of floundering behind the Russians in the space race, the U.S. took a leap forward unprecedented in its ambition. Less than 8 years later, an estimated 500 million people watched the incredible feat live on television, an astonishing demonstration of American preeminence to the world. It really was. It was sort of like, yeah, see my tires, they're bigger than yours. It really is. We're all about that in America, aren't we?
Yeah.
Now, the astronauts returned to Earth safely, bringing with them moon rocks and moon shoes. All right, they didn't bring those. We created those, but a whole array of iconic, beautifully framed photographs, and they did. They're gorgeous. But the suspicion that it was a bit too perfect struck almost immediately. Indeed, during a live ITV broadcast on the night of the landing, famous British TV historian A.J.P. Taylor questioned the veracity of what he was seeing. And you should. Now, yeah, I definitely have thoughts on it. I'm realizing that as I go already. We'll get to it. Talk that the landings were fake rose immediately, but it wasn't until Bill Kaysing, a senior technical writer for a NASA contractor, published his book, We Never Went to the Moon, in the 1970s, that the hoax theory really took hold. Kaysing, whose employer Rocketdyne, which sounds like something out of a movie we'd love from the 80s, Rocketdyne, Dino Corps, had worked on the Saturn V rocket, was suspicious of the Apollo program even before the moon landings, and alleged that NASA did not have the technology to achieve what they had claimed. Since Kaysing's book, opinion polls have somewhere between 6 to 20% of Americans believing the moon landings were a hoax, despite the vast majority of mainstream commentators regarding the belief as almost a byword for conspiracy theory. Sorry, I was reading ahead. But Kaysing had seen some seemingly convincing evidence to back up his claims. This is, oh man, the first one, the evidence for, this is the one I always leaned on. But again, could NASA really have pulled off the biggest hoax in history, the faking of the moon landings? I want to just go right to it. This is what I think, but I'm not going to do that because I don't think that's proper. You go right ahead. I'm going to be a lady about this thing. Mind my manners. So okay, what do you have? What do you have for it that says this is probably legitimate, or do you have it just kind of broken down as a whole? Do you have it in like separate categories, or?
Well, there's two sort of categories really. And what I've done is I've kind of listed the kind of the main talking points that people bring up that don't believe that we went to the moon landing.
All right, so evidence against. That's a good way to start, though, because then maybe when we come with the evidence for, maybe we can sway a few folks, or maybe not.
And I mean, we can kind of discuss that as we go too.
Sure.
We can list the points for the conspiracy and the points against it.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, like I said in the beginning, a lot of conspiracy theorists think that it would be, rather than all the money it would take and the technology and the mathematical figuring, all of that, rather than go through all of that, why wouldn't it be easier to just film it in the studio and fake it?
And considering that we did it in such a fashion that it's like, hey, look what we're doing. You didn't put yours on TV. Ha ha. I get it. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see that point. And before we really dive into the stuff, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm we're defending the the honesty of the United States government. They would never lie to us in this manner.
That's one of the biggest things that makes it so believable is that it's so government involved. It's like, hey, we promise we're going to do this, and if we can't, we're not ever going to. We're going to get in our big huge truck and run over little cars in traffic because we're that guy. We don't want you to ever think that we're second rate. We're always on top, right? Yeah. Always Absolutely. That guy. No offense to people with big trucks. Just, So,
I mean, I'm not going to say, the government doesn't lie to you. I think they do left and right. And, we've talked about aliens and the possibility that they're hiding that information from us as well. So the possibility is certainly there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive right into these things.
Let's do that. Yeah.
And see what you think. So here's one of the, this is dealing with the photographs of the astronauts on the moon themselves. One of the biggest starting points of conspiracy discussions. And a lot of people say that there's no atmosphere on the moon.
Right.
So there's not really you don't really experience a day and night cycle like you do here on Earth, where as in the daytime the atmosphere kind of obstructs the view of the stars and everything.
Right.
So
you can't go by sitcom television, new episodes at 8:00 like you can on Earth.
Right. So why don't we see any stars in any of the photos? So you look at the photos of the astronauts hopping around and posing, and doing experiments and all that, and then the sky just appears black.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why wouldn't we, if we're that much closer to the stars, logically, wouldn't we see a night sky filled with stars?
Well, my thought on that is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just thinking that when the sun is coming up in the morning and you're standing middle of the desert, you can still get an angle where the sun is not in the picture. Now, I'm not going to say that a bazillion stars and the one sun right there is going to be the same thing. I'm just saying people have always been able to sort of manipulate with imagery. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know. Yeah. I can't pick apart an image and be like, well, there you go. That's proof that it's in a studio. And where is it? Where was the studio? Hollywood? I don't know.
Who knows? They actually, and we can get to this again in a second, but a lot of people claim that Stanley Kubrick was brought in to direct the moon landing film.
Yeah, that's so common, and you're just like, wow, that dude's getting a lot of credit, and if he had nothing to do with it, good for him. And the film is grainy, says Dark Falls. Absolutely, that's
yeah. So that's the live feed that we got from the moon and the actual video. I mean, it's grainy as hell. So I don't know if anybody would even question the night sky in that, but in talking about the photos themselves, like the stills, you don't see any stars in the night sky.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any?
I don't know.
So there's actually not. This has been debunked pretty much.
Right.
This is not a valid argument.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to sound ignorant right off the bat. I was just thinking that. Why would it be that much difference from like seeing the huge moon from an angle here? It's just like, it doesn't have to be in the picture to prove to me that it's there.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
The reason is because the camera that they were used was set for broad daylight exposure. So if it was set for, it's so they could actually see the details of the lunar landscape and the astronauts and everything. Mm-hmm. They had to use daytime exposure.
Yeah, and if you know anything about trying to take a picture at night with your cell phone, then I know that sounds silly, but you have to consider the settings sometimes, or the picture's just garbage. They had to consider that back then.
Yeah, this is the same principle.
Yeah.
So if you set it for nighttime exposure, then you would get a sky full of stars. However, everything else in the picture would be completely washed out due to the naturally reflective nature of the moon's surface.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's more important to you, seeing the the stars, or just having like this big washed out mess at the bottom of the photo where the astronauts are supposed to be?
You know what? If we had horrible photos, people would be like, but, like the photos are bad. You can't tell. So, like, that's not proof. But now we've got good photos, and people are like, well, that's not legitimate either. It's just like, it feels like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, as they say, right?
Absolutely.
That's just sort of how it's going to be. You're going to have naysayers, but go ahead.
So you can view examples of the photos online, what they would look like with the nighttime exposure, and honestly, they wouldn't be worth bringing back or reporting.
Right.
All you're seeing is just, like I said, like a big white washed out mess at the bottom and like a night sky above.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that appears that way.
I mean, I think you have to just really even just consider what the 1920s films and imagery look like. It's just not like now where again, like the example earlier, you go outside, you snap a photo at night, you turn the flash on and it looks like an illuminated ball around a whole 10 feet area, or you have to mess with the exposure. I mean, a lot more goes into it than just, hey, we're going to take a picture on the moon. Like, come on. That one's never going to rule it out for me.
I think people forget, like you were saying, the technology back then. I can go out in my yard with my smartphone and I can get a great picture because I can sit there on the touch screen and make adjustments and
right.
and all, that none of that existed back then. And I think a lot of people that use photos as the argument kind of forget the level of technology back then. Even photographs, when we were kids, you can fill up a roll of film and not have any clue as to how any of it was going to come out.
Right.
Especially if you didn't have any knowledge
That's
of what your exposure should be or any of that.
You didn't they didn't have like 4 days to really go up there and plan and take a canvas and lighting and things. And I challenge you all, and not to sound like I'm a know-it-all, because I don't know. I'm just a guy like anybody else. But go outside right now and try to get a picture of your friend with stars, and it needs to be vibrant and perfect. And you need to convince me that you're not on the moon. I want a reverse picture. You know what I'm saying, though? It's like, this is one of the weaker ones. Let me offer one also that kind of correlates with that one a little bit, because this is kind of a silly one, I think. They say, now, there have been thousands of people who've worked for Apollo program forever. How could the lie remain a secret amongst this many people for years and years and years? Some argue that, it's the government's secrecy, but I'm thinking, that's going to come out if there's something to it, right?
Yeah, I thought we can go ahead and touch that, but I was going to kind of wrap up with that.
I'm sorry.
No,
I just felt some relevance was all and went with it.
No, you're completely right. Yeah, there would be. You can't. I don't care how many men in black you have. You can't tell thousands of people and their generations to follow. Mm-hmm. Don't you dare talk about this or reveal anything, or there will be consequences.
There are some things about that. Yeah, I was sure that's what you were just going to say.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in just a minute. Let's go back to these specific theories. So that one's kind of debunked about seeing the stars in the photo. And again, you can go test that out for yourself. But
sure can.
Remember, now you handy dandy smartphone with a preview screen to mess with now.
Right. So
which did not exist.
You're doing a lot better than they would have been. So you go out there and you do that, and you send us photos that we wouldn't know whether you were out in your yard or on the moon, because you can do it so well, and you have all these extra tools and capabilities that they didn't have. So that's one of those, like, about ghost pictures. Well, that reflection of light, it's a lens flare. It's like, maybe it's not. Yeah. Sometimes you don't know.
So speaking of the light sources, a lot of people, kind of the second most popular theory is people saying that the shadows and the light sources just don't add up.
Mm-hmm. And they do say that.
One of the most popular photos was of the astronaut, climbing down out of the lander. It's kind of shot from behind. Some will argue in that shot that the light source doesn't match the shadows. And
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
If they're seeing shadows cast from him and the lander, kind of pointing towards the viewer, which would mean that the sun, which is the only source of light up there, is behind the astronaut and the lander. So how are we able to see him so clearly? So they're saying that that's obviously studio lighting, set up there so we can because he's got I forgot to mention he's got two sets of shadows, pointing in two different directions, and so they're saying that's obviously it's studio lighting, because you've got two separate shadows, pointing in different directions, meaning there are two sources of light, which isn't necessarily true.
Right.
And for those of you that actually go outside during certain points
those that still do such a thing, yes,
and look down, there are certain points of the day where you'll see that you may actually have two sets of shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, the sun is yeah, I might be wrong on this, 150 million some kilometers away from the moon there. So if it was studio lighting, what they're saying is your light source would be much closer, obviously, than that of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
What happens there is that, you've got all kinds of rocks and craters and everything on the lunar surface. If your light source is much closer, then you see a diminishing of shadow as the landscape goes on.
Right.
In other words, there are the rocks in the background off in the distance are going to have a much smaller shadow.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you look at the photo, you can see that everything pretty much has an equal casting to it. Even as you look out in the distance of the lunar landscape.
I love these pictures, man. I do. They're
just amazing.
They are absolutely amazing. To think that now, depending on how you feel, but to think that there is someone standing on the moon taking this photo at one point in history, it's absolutely just awe-inspiring. Now, there's more to the photos. You're probably going to get to it, but I want a little bit of the lot.
Go for it.
It says none of the images on the lunar module on the moon's surface show any kind of blast crater or other disturbance underneath the Apollo lander's rocket engines. Several photos appear to show shadows coming from different directions, despite only one direct light source, the sun. Whilst many of these oddities can be explained, one photo is harder to dismiss. Two images from the 15 mission taken miles apart show the exact same background, but with different foreground scenes.
Ooh.
Yeah. So take that for what you will. But, I don't know. We'll never truly know, probably, but I think you want to shut everybody up. Go back now and show us. Just go back, do it again, and just tell everybody to shove it, and then if you either got away with a big one or you're proving the legitimacy, let's do it again.
Well, there's actually other ways to prove it as well, if you have the right equipment here on Earth. But we'll get to that in a moment.
All right, that sounds fun.
So, yeah, I think the arguments for the light sources just come from people just generally not understanding.
I want to say, by the way, that I understand we can't just, go do it tomorrow. That wasn't my point. My point is put your money where your mouth is. That's all I was getting at. I don't like naysayers. I just really like people who are open-minded. It's fine to doubt it or to think it's not real. Just don't be so hateful about it. Let's all discover together, all the naysayers and the yaysayers alike. Let's all just be a team about it. That's all I'm getting at, really.
There we go. Yeah. And it's good to, like we said, in the beginning, and we say just about on every show, question everything.
Question everything. And now, if I may, I kind of want to backtrack just for a second. There's the one that kind of, before you even consider the photographs, is that what was going on with the space program. Now, it came up a little bit in the intro, and I'm sure it was going to come up in your notes, and I would still love to hear what you have on it. But as of late, in the 1960s, as you know probably, the Apollo program was not at all where they wanted it to be for this sort of thing. They were way behind.
Right.
They actually had a fire in Apollo 1 that killed 3 astronauts. I don't know if you were aware of that. You probably were. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, one of them killed was Gus Grissom, who was so disenchanted with the progress they were making that he hung a lemon off the Apollo ladder. He felt they were so far behind, there was little chance of them making it in time to fulfill Kennedy's promise. Now, in May 1968, Neil Armstrong was almost killed during failed testing of the lunar lander. If NASA were unable to successfully land the craft on Earth during testing, what chance did they have on the moon? Improbably, just over a year later, everything came together perfectly, and on their very first attempt, they successfully landed on the moon without a hitch. It's something to consider. It is.
Well, I don't really know what to...
What do you follow that with? It's like...
to say about that.
Just stop it. Just stop it. But for real, it does make good sense. And this is why there are firm believers in that direction. You can't argue with that. It's one of those things where say you had a car right now that was bits and pieces, you put it together and it blew up or it just constantly wouldn't run properly and it broke down. All of a sudden you show up at a really important time that you need to show up, and it's just perfect. You have to consider that there was something weird about it. And I think that's why there is such a, the groups.
We had that story of the girl that won the lottery twice in one night.
Yeah, exactly. There's the chance at all times. And welcome, Princess Jazz, by the way. And if I didn't welcome you, Dark Falls, welcome to you. I just happened to look at the people who've actually signed up with a nice little username. Mookie Mook's in here still, and then my daughter is listening, and a bunch of anonymous folks. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't do that sooner. Tonight's show was coming together. We had a lot of stuff, and we're already like way over in time, but that's going to be all right. This is a fun one. There's a lot more to talk about on this stuff. So let's get back to this. Now go ahead. Now what next?
Okay, so and I don't know if I finished that point on the reason we can see the astronaut in that photo is again because of the exposure setting of the camera.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No problem. What I was gonna say, if it was set any differently, like I said before, you're gonna get like a white washout kind of look, and it's just gonna be a blurry, awful mess.
Yeah, so, mess with the settings on your your phone. Like just mess with the exposure and things.
My advice to anybody that's going to follow these conspiracies or entertain the notion of at least the ones dealing with photographs,
right, is
to explore some photography yourself. Take a class, get into old school photography, before smartphones and digital cameras and all that. And I think that will really enlighten you to everything involved in that.
How many bad Polaroid photos do you remember taking where it popped it out of the camera and you're shaking and you're like, well, I had my chance at that moment and this is what I got from it. So yeah. And now imagine an even more primitive camera than that.
Right.
Because that was totally like, wow, 30 seconds of shaking violently, and I see what happened, 30 seconds ago. But think before that, you're on the moon, you have no setup time, as you mentioned earlier. Just go take some pictures, and there's no guarantee. I don't know. I don't mean to keep going back to that, but it's just so, it's another thing that comes up a lot when we talk about things in the paranormal field. It's like, who are we to judge what they could do with a camera? Now, the results and things aside, we can't really judge old things on technology. It was just so primitive. So I usually set that aside, just me personally. Now, go ahead.
Now, some people say, well, NASA may have had, more advanced, technology in photography and all that, but you got to remember that wasn't their field.
Right.
We're creating NASA for the sole purpose of faking things like this. So we need to be like the technological leader. And,
you know what? I think we would have had a much higher version of tennis than Pong had NASA been able to accomplish more. You know what I'm saying? Let's just break it down like that. So, yeah.
Just to put the technology in perspective, you made the Pong reference, but like your Nintendo Entertainment System probably has more computing power than like, a lot of the instruments that they were using back then.
Compare like a disc from in the 1990s versus a tiny little thumb drive now, a little SD card, for example. It's come a long way. You just kind of have to almost disassemble it and look back, retract what versus the history books. And then maybe at least, we're not saying that we're preaching to you or anything. We're just saying that consider the times, consider the technology. If they were so amazing at making cameras, then why did cameras still suck for so long afterwards? Why didn't they make a slaughtering off of them to fund their missions and things? So, all right. Now I want to mention this, if you don't mind. It's why we just don't go do it now. Cause I mentioned that earlier and I was just being silly. I was being a little off the collar there, But the Apollo landings were more than 45 years ago, obviously, and yet it remains completely unprecedented as a technical achievement. Nobody has come anywhere near to replicating what was achieved, and this is obviously going to play into a certain side of things. Not even the Russians, who were years ahead of us in the space race, ever came close. Apollo sent 12 men 240,000 miles to the moon and back, yet after the last mission in 1972, no other human being has ever traveled more than 400 miles above the surface of Earth, despite being orders of magnitude more complex and dangerous than anything else ever attempted before or since, and despite sending 600 times further than would ever be achieved again. Apollo's safety record is miraculous. Now, all 12 men returned to Earth safely, whilst 14 astronauts died on the space shuttle program alone, despite never having traveled more than 200 miles above Earth. NASA today admits it can't go back to the moon, citing the lethal effects of radiation. NASA Administrator Dan Golden gave an interview in 1994 where he admitted they would have to find a way to overcome the effects of cosmic radiation if man was to ever venture out of Earth orbit, despite the fact that they had successfully done it 6 times 25 years earlier. Now, in 2005, NASA again said the radiation problem was a showstopper for man ever going back to the moon. NASA achieved things 45 years ago using crude technology that we couldn't today. And that's one of the few examples in modern human history where mankind's progress has truly retracted backwards. Now, that's a big one. There's one of the ones that has swayed me, certainly. Not the photographs, but that's where the facts come in, and you start thinking, you can't just throw that out. You have to consider it.
Well, I think, is it a matter of we don't want to expose our astronauts to that any longer, but we were willing to back then?
Right. Or we just didn't realize exactly how bad it was, maybe even. I mean, you could consider that even.
That's true as well. I mean, we just probably didn't have an understanding that, because there was a time when we painted our houses with lead paint.
And that's absolutely true.
We used asbestos for insulation. I mean,
look at Chernobyl. I think we know now a lot more now. We've discussed before, I think, that could get out of hand still to this day and happen again. But like you're just pointing out, that there's a lot to be learned before we knew it. Like before we have this new rule, we could have done that thing. And I know that's what you're getting at. Not to word that differently, I guess. Yeah. But I just wanted to give an example. Is yes, it used to happen and everything.
Yeah. And you're right there. I think it's, I've heard that statement in the past, and I think it's more a matter of, we're aware of this danger now, and we don't want to expose it.
Unaware or negligence versus
if we do that now, we have to get somebody to acknowledge and give consent that, okay, I'm going to be exposing myself to cosmic radiation if we do this,
right?
Because they've never stated, it's a lethal dose. That if you go outside of this realm, that's like being, that's like holding plutonium or something, with your bare hands, or or being ground zero at Chernobyl or something like that.
The Van Allen belts are the thing that we now talk about, and I don't know if that was a thing, like you said, back then. Was it? I don't know. I guess.
I'll do some more research on that, because that's the point I've always taken with it.
Darkfall says they were launching a vehicle about the size of a van, what was essentially, and I'm sorry, with extra booster rockets, so there was more power to carry the extra shielding. Okay, see? Darkfall's, you're priceless, sir. He also says something that's relevant to earlier. My watch has more computing power than a 1969 computer. That's absolutely true. There's no arguing with that. It's sort of like we were saying with the cameras, like, just consider the times. Things like technology used to move so slowly compared to now. From one year to the next, your computer is like garbage. You know, like I spent $1,200 on my computer one year. By the next year, my processor was behind. I didn't have as much RAM as everybody else. My graphics card was like 2 generations old already. It's like, but back then you could have a car for 20 years and it was still a good car most of the time. That's not the way it is anymore. Things are very different. And in a lot of ways, they're produced to be that way, obviously, so that you have to continually buy things. But that's a conspiracy show, I think. So I'm sorry to sidetrack. It starts with Van Allen belts, and then it just goes crazy. So go ahead.
So let's get back to the moon itself on the surface.
Sounds good. Smart place.
You've probably heard the conspiracy theory, like this is during the live feed of the landing itself that everyone watched. Why is the American flag blowing in the breeze all majestically?
Because somebody
there's no atmosphere.
Is singing the national anthem, and that's what happens. Yeah. Don't you ever doubt America, buddy.
That's the answer. If you stick the American flag anywhere, it will immediately begin to blow in the breeze.
Absolutely. It'll look heroic and amazing.
You know that?
Don't you ever say otherwise, buddy. Never. All right. Anyway,
actually,
scientifically speaking,
it's because this particular flag was not made of cloth like you would, just go buy at the store and hang up at your house. It was made of a different kind of material. And as such, this material, wasn't planned this way or anything, but in a vacuum, much like the vacuum of space, excuse me, this material would kind of wiggle in the vacuum of space. And what's interesting, there's actually been a modern test of this. It was actually on one of the episodes of Mythbusters.
Oh, yes.
Seen that show, but they went to a facility that had a vacuum chamber that would simulate the vacuum of space. And they had a flag made of the same material. Now a lot of people believe that, they planted the flag and somebody's hand might have knocked it, which, began the kind of fluttering motion of it. But what they found was, they set up this flag, which was still in our atmosphere. It was just perfectly still. But once the vacuum was applied, it actually made this material begin to sort of flutter around.
There you go.
So
that's scientifically speaking a fair explanation, I think.
It was not a cloth flag. It's actually more of I guess like a T-shaped stick, sort of, with the. I wish I had looked up what the material itself was made of. It's more of a plastic.
Do you want that I should do that for us? Would that help produce a little information in the show?
Yeah, that might help.
All right, well, let's do that. So you go ahead and whatever else you have on that particular. Do you have anything else on that?
Nothing else on that. Just that that's the way that the flag would behave in a vacuum.
I have a what's called a mechanical keyboard. So if you hear it in the background, I apologize, but it absolutely is a loud keyboard. All right, so NASA says the flag was made of nylon. It was bought off the shelf, according to a NASA contractor. Yes, I will actually read more on that and not just give you that, because that sounds like it's underselling everything. But yeah, no. It's not just like I'm pretty sure. There's a huge article on it. If you want to go to jsc.nasa.gov/history/flag/flag.htm, there's a whole write-up on it, because people question that flag. That's like a huge question. And it's actually something that I wasn't that aware of. I had seen that, obviously it shouldn't be waving in the wind like eagles are flying over at a baseball game, but I guess I really didn't consider it that heavily. That's totally on me. That's my ignorance, but I don't know. Go read that. Go read that for yourself after the show. See what you think. I landed nowhere on that one. Literally nowhere.
I believe that it was simply because of the vacuum of space. One, because of the material, and two, because they actually I watched them prove that on, the show.
Yeah.
So that's good enough for me.
Mookie Mook says, by the way,
if you want to visit the,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, she wanted me to mention that the flag was made 10 minutes from where she grew up.
Well, congratulations to her.
Yeah, on your manipulative flag that no matter where it is, it's always waving. Yeah.
Now
go
you've
ahead.
Got something to give your life meaning.
It's true. There you go. I live near that where the flag came from. Yeah, no, it is. It's neat. So there you go. That's literally all I have on the flag. So go ahead.
So if we look back at the this was done in a studio. Do you really think that they would risk like bringing a fan in and like risking like blowing around all this moon dust?
I will tell you, absolutely not. You know why? Because I'm sitting in a room right now that is hot as a brick oven, and it's because I want things to be as natural as possible. Now, they would have to know, like you said, it would blow dust around, and it would be so clearly not natural. Just from a standpoint of production in general, it wouldn't make any sense. I think that one's silly, right? I don't know. Okay. I feel like that one's ridiculous, but it's a thing, right?
So I want to go to because I know we're kind of way over on the subject.
It's fine, actually. Mookie Mook is wanting to say more things, and we'll let her later. But Megan's going to pop in here in a little bit, and she can say what she wants in person with us. So I look forward to. She got really excited when I told her what we were doing. So she should have some definite thoughts on this stuff. She's always been interested in this, as far as I'm aware. She might know some things we don't, so that'll be fun. Now, continue by all means.
So I want to talk about the technological limitations of faking such a thing back in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to the original point, I think a lot of people that believe in these theories just don't make an effort to understand the level of technology back then when it comes to, I'm not speaking of, like our rockets and space programs capabilities. I'm talking about the capability of television itself.
Okay.
And our filming, because another thing too is people forget that those are two completely different realms of science that, we're pursuing there.
Dark Falls was going to say the flag. Where are the strings? Agreed. I assume those two things are related. Actually, with strings you can move the flag. Now, I read those together. Those might not be related. So, Dark Falls, please correct me if I'm wrong. He was going to say where are the strings. So I'll leave it at that comment, and he can elaborate on that. I kind of put them together on my own.
I don't know if they would risk that on live television. So let's, like you said earlier, roughly 500 million people tuned in to watch this live.
Right. Huge production.
Now, all we, and I'll go ahead and admit this, the only thing I've ever seen of the footage is from, documentaries and things. And what you're seeing in that are the best cuts, like the highlight reel and everything. You're seeing the best footage, and all
like
this.
A YouTube mix video, yeah.
So when this when this happened on live TV, the lander touches down. We've got audio from the astronauts, and I think it took like 14 minutes or so.
Right.
Before they finally exit the lander, and then you've got the one small step for man moment.
Yeah.
That's like 14 minutes into the broadcast.
Right.
Of nothing. So for one thing, with the short attention spans that people have these days, I don't think they would have lasted through that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. For sure.
But the broadcast lasted. Now keep this number in your head, because this will be important in a moment.
All right.
The live footage was 145 continuous minutes. So that's them, like hopping around, picking up rocks and, doing their little experiments, things like that.
I want to correct myself real fast. Dark Falls, I pieced those together myself. I was thinking that, yes, they could, if they wanted to manipulate the flag, they could use things like strings. It actually raised a point for me in my head that did work together. It was irrelevant with what he was saying, but it raises a point that you can, even then, there are ways to manipulate things. And that's why I always say I don't trust the media, be it the people or what I'm seeing anymore. You just realize you can't rely solely on what you see in a video because people can manipulate it. And so that was on me, but it does raise a good point.
Here's the thing about the strings. I don't know what direction, maybe somebody's above pulling strings. I don't know.
Right.
But so they get out, like I said, this broadcast lasted for 145 live minutes. In which time they plant the flag early on, and they put their flag out and everything. And we see the fluttering of the flag, as they go about their experiments and everything. During that time, they pretty much cross all angles of the flag. So there's nobody like off screen pulling the string.
Right.
Or anything like that, or they would have crossed into it. So something to consider there. I guess somebody would have to review the footage of the flag to make sure nobody like waved their hand over top of it or anything.
Right. Make sure there's no like in what is it, 3 Men and a Baby, make sure there's no like weird guys who ended up in the footage that becomes like this long running thing, like, oh, he's a ghost, I've heard the story. No, he's really just an extra or whatever, a prop guy.
It's true.
This could potentially become that if we look too deep, Yeah.
I kind of wonder if they had known back then that people would have questioned this much, if they would have planted the flag and then, like in a magic show, they would have waved their hands all around it just to show there's no strings or anything.
That's funny to think about, yeah.
So where I'm getting with this, that we've got this live, boring feed of them walking around on the moon. Let's talk how we make film today.
Okay, sure.
Versus back then. So, do you know much about filming slow motion video?
I mean, I suppose not. I don't know. Maybe I thought I did, but
there's two methods to do this.
Okay.
Now, keep in the back of your mind that, okay, we're going to figure out how to do this. It's 1969, and we're going to do this live for 500 million people. Do you realize the risk, how damaging that would be to the country if people were able to clearly see that this was fake?
Right.
True. We would just be, I can't even imagine the damages.
Oh,
that would be done.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people don't really consider that either.
It's true. Darkfall says he meant to make the astronauts appear as if they were falling more slowly. That kind of lends in what you're saying now. That's very risky. Very risky. Any kind of manipulation is definitely risky. What would it have done, as you're asking? So go ahead.
So one might consider, okay, we're going to fake this, so let's shoot it in slow motion. Well, how do you do that? There are two methods for creating slow motion video. We'll talk about what was available back then. Now you can just pull up an app on your smartphone and just say you want to record in slow motion and bam, you're done. But back then you pretty much had to follow analog filming rules back then. So there were two main methods. One is to, of course, shoot at normal speed and then play it back slower. So what happens the problem that you get when you do that is you get a choppy sort of film. I think it reduces it to like 10 frames per second or something like that. So that's not really ideal for a live broadcast. Your footage is going to be real choppy then. The other method, of course, is and is kind of how we still do it today, sort of, is called overcranking.
Overcranking.
Well, I guess we don't really use that.
That sounds like an Amish method of some sort. Well, Jacob tore up the butter churn. He overcranked it. I'm not making fun of the Amish. I love the Amish. I sometimes wish I had been born Amish. They're great people. They have such pride. But anyway, that's another show for a different show or a different series altogether. Not for us, but any which way. Go right ahead. What is overcranking?
So that's when you let's see. Overcranking is where you film at a high speed, in other words, and then you slow it down to get and what this does is it gives you a much smoother frame rate.
So is it essentially like recording in fast motion and then playing it at a normal rate or frames per second kind of deal? Okay. Exactly.
So remember, we're in 1969. There's no such thing as high-speed cameras at this time.
Right.
It doesn't exist. So what you're going to have to do is, now remember, we've got to get 145 minutes of live footage to show on TV.
Right.
So it would have been done on a 35 millimeter film back in the day. Now let me step back a bit. There were other methods of recording back then,
mm-hmm.
and people might bring up, well, we had like slow motion replays and stuff, like in sporting events and things like that. But I believe that was done with magnetic disc technology back then,
right,
which gave you, if you're using the overcrank method, you could get about 30 seconds of film on one of these magnetic discs, or 30 seconds of footage.
Wow.
Once you filmed it and then replayed it in slow motion to get that smoother frame rate.
Mm.
So
Super 9, yes.
The size of these things, what can I compare it to? I mean, it's not convenient.
Right, sure.
To get 145 minutes worth of film, I mean, you're talking about a magnetic disc the size of a football field or larger, to achieve such a thing. And at that size, I don't know if the technology would still apply.
You're fine, Dark Falls, Super 8. Yeah, I thought maybe there was a Super 9, but I definitely knew you meant Super 8 as in the film, yeah. So, I don't know. This is one of those things. It's like, no matter which side you want to believe, there's just too much to the contrary almost. It's almost one of those where there's so many negatives on both sides that you're like, how does anybody even consider it at all? There's too much junk data mixed in. There's too many open ends, too many questions. You want to believe it because the pictures are beautiful and you want to think that it's possible, but then you take what we know now and you're just like, I don't know what to think. This is one of those really tough subjects that I don't know that you'll change anybody's feeling on. I'm noticing now that I'm not really changing where I stand on it. I'm just getting more aggravated with the questions that are now that I'm learning more of. There's, like you were just saying about the size of this thing and what it would actually take to get, what'd you say, 145 minutes? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's how long the footage was.
It's just like somebody would have to really plan this thing. Like the government would have had to been like, we're going to dedicate not this year to killing more people in a failed test. We're going to dedicate this year into the production. You would almost have to, right?
See, when you get into it, like thinking of it like that, it almost sounds easier to let's just go to the moon.
Exactly. And then you're like, but damn it, the limitations. All right, let me welcome in Megan real quick. She just showed up, and then I'll let you go right back to where you were, sir. So, Megan, Thank you for coming in and hanging out with us as usual.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been trying to get here as hard as I could.
She had to go pick up her copy of Zelda for the Switch that came in last week. So.
Yeah, way.
All right, now, go right ahead, Ryan. Now, sorry to sidetrack you, man.
So, let's see, where were we?
I don't know. We're confused.
Like I'm like teaching
You were telling me about the size and overcranking. So.
Okay, so let's get back to the film. So the magnetic disc method is out of the question.
Okay.
At that point.
All right.
Let's say you're going to do it with 35 millimeter film.
Okay.
Back then. So if you shot it in standard, or if you're let me get back to the overcranking. If you're doing that to get your 30 frames per second,
okay.
I think they said it would take 1,125 feet of film.
Wow.
Now, if we're going to play that back in slow motion, that means you need to take 47 minutes of film at the high speed in order to equate the 145 minutes played back in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
So for 47 minutes of that film, that comes to 5,300 feet of film. So in 1969, film mags didn't come in that size. I don't know if they do now or ever did. So
not that I'm aware of. That's insane.
So the way you'd have to do this is in 1,000-foot mags.
Okay.
So how do you hide the splicing marks between the mags on live TV?
Mm-hmm.
That seems like the most obvious way to give away to me. So there are methods to get around that. For example, you could have do what they call, I believe it's called like a proof roll, or an A/B answer roll.
I believe that's made by Little Debbie, isn't it? The proof roll. That was bad. All right. Well, I want to make one little tiny. Of course,
we're gonna have at least one bad joke from you.
Of course, sure. That's my thing. I'm the bad joke guy. But I want to say one small thing. You think of like people's entrails and things, and that's disgusting, bowels and whatnot. You can get a lot into a little package if you have to. That's my only point. I would say it's completely insanely unlikely. I'm just saying, technically, you can haul it.
At stake, though.
Right. Well, what about the idea? Sorry, go ahead. What's that?
I was just saying, remember what's at stake, and if people discover what we're doing, it's going to ruin the United States.
Right.
I mean, this could be devastating, not just to the space, not just to space exploration, but like just devastating. You know, the overall honesty of the country and our credibility to the world would just be completely shot.
Right.
So to get back to this film roll, back then in '69, you would have had to employ, like a film lab to take the answer roll and create a new set of film without your splice segments in it.
Right.
Which would take, a room full of hundreds of people, which are more people you have to silence about this thing,
Sure.
And again, NASA is not in the film business, so they don't have a lab to do this. They're going to be going to Kodak or whatever.
I don't think they even have paid killer budget, so I doubt they could afford to wipe people out anyway.
Yeah, so you're either, like you said, going to have to murder all these people, or again, employ the threatening, don't you or any of your generations after speak of this. And there's just too much risk involved.
There really is.
Back to the technological aspect. So then you have to create, and I know the film was grainy as hell or anything.
Yes.
But there are no typical film artifacts on the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's grainy, yes, but you're not seeing any dust specks or any scratches. No hairs, certainly.
Right.
Anything like that was typical of films back then. So in all of this work in the lab, you have to make sure that not a single scratch or speck of dust or scratch or anything is on this film, because anything like that is going to give it away.
Which is virtually impossible now for the grain film. I mean,
So once you play this on TV, as soon as somebody sees a hair, up on the film, it's done. Like the whole thing falls apart then.
Right.
And like Dark Falls just said in the chat room, people have dedicated their lives to like trying to pick this thing apart, and they've watched it frame by frame by frame. Right. And no one's found like splicing marks or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Not a thing.
So there you have it. At least if you're doing the 35 millimeter film method back then, and that makes it just kind of technologically impossible to even fake.
Right.
Back then. And for me, I think the risk is too high, and the trust you're putting into that many more hands outside of the government is too high.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just think it just was not feasible to fake it back then in 1969.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I'll tell you what, let's take a small little break. And I think tonight we're just going to stick with this topic for the whole show. I mean, we're already at almost 2:00, and I still have more myself personally. And I know Megan's got some stuff she wants to say. So if you guys would like to hang with us a little late tonight, we'll just stay on this one subject. And then next week, I've actually, I'm not going to say it was just me, but we've got some really cool things like what some top scientists, authors, people who make films and things think that aliens would actually look like. And there's a curious blood type that we'll talk more about. Yeah, we'll talk more about those things next week. Those will make for a fun kind of alien show. But for now, let's take a quick break, and we'll get back, and we'll just jump right back into this if everybody's good with that, because I'm having a blast with it.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's do that. Let's head over to VHS.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Let's go rent a movie.
I don't know. I was kind of looking forward to a sub.
Wonder if there's a place where we can have both. VHS.
What does VHS stand for?
Sign says VHS and hot subs. That's awesome.
Smell those meatballs.
Hey, look, foot-long meatball sub and a free movie rental all weekend long for only $5.99.
Dude, look, rent RoboCop 1 and get RoboCop 2 free this weekend only. Rad, man.
You mean for only $200 down, I can get a Sega CD?
Yeah, dude, and a free tuna biscuit.
Don't forget your free copy of Night Trap.
Night Trap? Whoa.
Don't tell Mom.
You boys.
VHS and hot subs at 30 Town Center Drive on the left by the abandoned go-kart track. For more, head over to MidnightSpookhouse.com. Have you ever seen a ghost? Have you ever heard voices? Maybe you know someone who has. If you're afraid to share your story, there's not always an outlet, and sometimes it's scary. But don't worry about being judged. Come and hang out with us at Spookhouse Radio, and we'd love to hear your story. Write us an email or come hop in chat. We go live every Friday night at midnight, and we'd love to have you and your story.
Spookhouse Radio.
And we are back. And once again, thanks everybody who's hanging out with us. We're sorry we're running so late, but sometimes you pick a topic and you don't know how long. It may go 10 minutes and it may go 3 hours. And this is one of those I guess we should have anticipated might go longer. So here we are. Yeah, we're back. And I know Ryan still has things to say. Megan has things to say. And I still have some things to say for a change. So let's get back to it. What's the natural next step? Megan, what did you kind of have? Anything relevant to what we've already talked about? Or like what do you think about all this? Not your final, this is what I think, but maybe some extra information. Do you have anything like that? Well, actually, let me unmute you so you can do that. So there you go. I'm sorry.
Ask me a question and don't let me talk.
Well, I didn't want to actually hear you. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that troubles me is the debris left from the Apollo missions is supposedly left on the moon, i.e. the moon buggy that they rode around in and the flag. Mm-hmm. However, those should be visible through either a powerful telescope or the Clementine probe that recently mapped the moon's surface. Mm-hmm. And it failed to show any Apollo artifacts left by man during those missions.
I saw that. I think when Ryan or I read that news story that they had talked about that recently.
Oh,
how does that make you feel, Ryan? Let's get let me be your psychiatrist for a moment. How does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
How does that make me feel?
Yeah, how does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
Well, there's actually a scientific explanation as to why we can't see those artifacts on the moon itself. And and I'm honestly not prepared for the telescope method. In other words, why you can't, there's a scientific reason why you can't just, go buy a telescope, step out into your yard, and view, those details on the moon. Mm-hmm. However, when it comes to those scans, again, I think what we're forgetting is we're looking for something the size of a minivan, and that's just not going to show up in the. I mean, how close to the ground do these scans get?
Right.
I mean, there's if we look at like the Google Maps of Earth, you can't see the details of anybody's car, barely.
Right. Can you see like a tiny little sandcastle that, Bobby builds on the beach? Probably not.
Exactly. So I think we're underestimating just the size of the moon itself and what exactly you're looking for.
Sure.
I'm sure there are probably several different artifacts on there that could be confused for the moon landing site. I don't know. I think NASA themselves would need to weigh in on that and I'm sure they have the exact coordinates on where to look and everything.
Right.
But to that point, they did leave some reflective, what are they? Prisms, I think, on the moon. If you have a laser pointing device, now not, one you're going to just pick up at the Dollar Tree and again, step out into your yard.
You underestimate the Dollar Tree laser light, sir.
You need some higher end equipment, but, you can actually aim a laser at the moon and it will reflect that laser and return that data back to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you aim at that spot where they left that, those objects.
That's what I was going to say. That they have the moon. They have the reflectors that they still use today to reflect beams back. That how else are you going to get it there? That's pretty legitimate to me. It's nice. It's actually some positive because it's so easy to say it's unlikely they didn't have the technology. Things weren't this and things weren't that. But it's hard to actually come with a little bit of proof. And I think this is one of those legitimate things that says just maybe.
So, we want to move on to the next point, or?
Well, I was kind of leaving room because I feel like often I do that, and you're like, well, let's get back to this for a minute, and I just didn't want to do that to you. I have another one that's sort of in the pro. If it may be one that you already have, the moon rock.
Yeah, we've got you mean the ones that they brought back?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, well, it simply
about the mysterious rocks.
Yes, the moon rock the Apollo astronauts brought back to Earth is strong evidence that man must indeed have visited the moon. Although it's impossible to find moon rocks on Earth, imagine that. Still, moon shoes, I'm telling you, they're very rare and have different surface characteristics to true moon rock. I meant that it is possible, but it's not the same. Now, however, skeptics point out that the real moon rocks could still have been returned to Earth using unmanned probes. That is a consideration, but it's like, come on, what are they gonna do? This thing, if you've seen it, what did they do? Go up there and they have like one of those hammers and they bust it and they're like, all right, that's a little much to think about, right? Because this is like a piece.
You mean a probe? Or
like a probe. Yeah, not that they went up there and just busted it up themselves. I mean, I'm saying if in the stance against it, what are the odds that a probe went up there and used a mechanical arm to bust a piece off and then bring it back? Did it stick it in its little space fanny pack? It's just because of what it looks like to me. I think that's kind of ridiculous. That's all.
Well, again, remember we're in 1969, mm-hmm. and there are virtually no robotic arms or any kind of technology like that in existence at that point.
Ooh, may I add a little something real fast?
Certainly.
There was an embarrassing footnote to this moon rock. For NASA in 2009, when it was discovered a piece of moon rock they had donated to a Dutch museum was actually petrified wood. No explanation has been offered.
Oops.
Oops. This goes in very much to what you were saying earlier about if you could even catch like a glimmer of light on a string, it blows everything completely out. This might be one of those.
How does that happen?
How do
you
NASA,
accidentally donate a petrified wood piece?
Maybe they were like, we don't really want to give them a moon rock, so we're going to hope they don't notice. I don't know.
You're going to give me Sunset Riders for my birthday. And
yeah.
Hope that I don't notice that it's like a Russian reproduction.
Right. Or I'm going to put like a Dr. Mario card inside the cart or something. Yeah. Like it's that sort of thing. I don't know. That is extremely embarrassing, and that is not a footnote they need with this. If you go to YouTube, there are tons of videos of like Neil Armstrong, and people are, so what happened here and why this and that, and he looks like he just wants to be like, you know what? It was all a lie. He looks like he wants to just say that. I'm not saying that he would say that and mean it, but there's videos, man. I don't know. Anybody else have anything on the moon rock? I don't want to move too fast, but what do you say about a moon rock? I don't know.
Well, one of the differentiating factors, I don't think we mentioned this, in a piece of moon debris that had crashed to Earth versus one that they brought back, is in the microscopic study of it. Moon rocks from the moon itself, at the microscopic level, have been bombarded by particles, over the course of existence, where that's not going to be the case for a rock that you find on Earth that was part of, the original debris of the moon.
Sure.
If you look at a rock that, there are actually microscopic craters within craters on the moon rock that they brought back. So it's clearly something special going on there.
Right.
I mean, it's been sitting on the surface and continually bombarded by things over the course of existence.
That would be a really smooth transition into next week's show, just for the record. That one right there, because of the blood type that is also very, very real, but very rare. But again, we'll do that next week. I will promote that a little bit and say that what's cool about it, there's a lot of negatives to the blood type, but what's cool about it is, as with everything, it is science versus theology, which so often is the problem. It's fallen angel versus alien versus oddity. It's going to be interesting. Let's just say that. I think we'll see what happens with it. But
tune in next week to find out.
Tune in next week. Get a free tuna biscuit.
That's it.
We're sorry about that commercial. It was really fun for us, though. But any which way. So, do you have any more?
About it at all.
Do you have any more theories? Or I have 3. So, how many do you have left?
I'm good. I want to hear because I'm pretty much decided on the whole thing.
Okay,
but I want to hear what else you've got to throw at it.
All right. Well, let's start with a little bit of this then. If the U.S. had really faked the moon landings, surely the Russians would have known about it and told the world. Question mark. This was still, especially now, politically speaking, this was still the height of the Cold War, and after a decade of dominating the space race, the Russians had been comprehensively unsurpassed by the U.S. as the world's leading space superpower. Would they have really turned down the opportunity to humiliate and expose their bitter rivals? Skeptics tend to struggle with this one, without at least adding even more outlandish theories about the reality of the Cold War itself. Some argue that the Russians may have remained silent because they were actually dependent on the U.S. for wheat, or may have worried some of their own space fakery would be exposed. However, these explanations remained unconvincing, leaving the Russian question a major barrier to the idea that the moon landings were faked. Now, what is everybody's thoughts on that? I mean, it's relevant again, the U.S. and Russia. It hasn't been in a while, but it's once again kind of a relevant thing. Do you think it could come out now? I know that sounds silly, but do you think that would be something like we make them mad and then it comes out now? Or maybe they just say it to spite us.
I think now in today's political climate, it could come out now.
Would it be real though? Would we believe it? I don't know.
But let's step back to back then. I'm sure they were astonished that we achieved that. And I have no doubt in my mind that they would have been like analyzing this footage frame by frame, trying to find flaws in it. And the fact is that they couldn't dispute any of it. They couldn't find any of that.
That's it.
Or they would have admit it. They would have rose a huge stink about it back then.
They would have, no question.
They would have called foul, no question. And I know, like to the point where they were dependent on us for weed or maybe some other products.
Did you say wheat or weed? Because it sounded a little more like weed.
maybe
they needed our weed. But either which way, we were important to them. Maybe.
Yeah, so on the flip side of that, couldn't you hold us to that? Hey, you can give us a better deal on that, or we'll leak this information.
That's a good thought. Definitely.
Are you saying that Russians are not above blackmail?
Blackmailing their dealer, apparently. So this is,
and again, like, think of the implications of what faking this would mean. Like I said earlier, that's not only discrediting our space program and everything, but that is pretty much disgracing the value of the American name itself.
That's it, yeah.
From that on, we're no longer to be trusted with really anything if we're willing to fake something of that magnitude.
That's true.
So why don't you just, hey, this was fake, here's the proof, here's how they did it, here it is. Now, America, if you want to remain on the economic stage, you're pretty much just going to have to give us a way better deal on the things that you're exporting to us and, blah, 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 to remain relevant. Because, I don't think people realize just how devastating that would be to, I don't want to say the American brand, but that's pretty much it. Like the American name.
What we're capable of, like no one would
describe everything that we're about.
Yes, Dark Falls
be that dishonest and fake something.
Same Spook House channel, same Spook House time. He said that, and I thought that was clever. Yes, next week that's when that show will be. It'll be Friday, technically Saturday for you hair splitters at midnight. It'll be that one's always difficult whenever I'm typing it out. I'm like, if I say midnight Saturday, I guess that depends on how you feel about midnight and what day. So but yeah, he says also that the Russians analyzed it. Absolutely they did. They did. They would still be holding that over us today if there was something. Who knows? Give it a little time. Like Ryan said, with the state of things, you never know. Now there's a couple more. I guess I need to move them a little faster because it's 2:11 already. Eastern time, I should say. Now, the Apollo landings were one of the most important events in human history, yet NASA have lost or destroyed virtually all of the evidence for it. Amazingly, zero of the original film footage of any of the missions survives, only poor quality third and fourth generation video copies. Most of the original plans and blueprints for the lunar model, the rover, and the Apollo hardware are also lost or destroyed. Was such a cavalier attitude to this the most momentous of events really credible, or was it to prevent clear scrutiny or closer scrutiny of the evidence for NASA's claims? In the era of the great explorers in the late 19th and early 20th century, most claims for the discovery of a new land or the achievement of some new milestone had to be independently checked and verified, yet most of what we know about the moon landings has only one source. One source. Guess who that might be?
Who's that?
NASA. and whose best interest would NASA be looking out for in this scenario?
NASA,
America. I mean, we don't get funding if we can't produce results.
I think all of this, I'm going to blame the space shuttle era.
Yeah, WikiLeaks
on this. After we achieved, these amazing things, and then from the period of, the, I guess, mid 80s to was it early 2000? When did we retire the space shuttle?
Megan, you might know that one.
I want to say it was late. I think it was early 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure the right year. It wasn't too.
We didn't really do anything. Like what did in those decades, of all of our space shuttle flights up and everything. Like, what did we really do? I think NASA for that time period was really just kind of lethargic, and it's like we're just doing space because that's what we do, I guess.
That sounds though,
Not
if
sure
you just
what we're doing.
but if you just hear somebody talk that way about it, it's like they're just acting that way. Because would you not like now our radio show? I save backups of originals, of demos, of intros, and it's because I'm proud of it, and these are milestones we take. Unless disaster struck, God forbid, or space forbid, or alien forbid, whatever you believe. But the point is I would make sure I could be like, here, look, don't tell me what I know, because I have the original to prove it. That's why I wouldn't cut interviews with folks, because I don't want what they say to sound as if I've tampered with it. That is a huge one. I think it has to make any believer of it, and I don't know. I guess why would you doubt it necessarily? I guess casually.
I guess some.
But
to the second point I was getting at, during that era, and then I also want to reiterate that I have always been a major fan of NASA, even during the space shuttle days. Like, those were amazing times for me.
Even when they did the Black Album, they were still good in your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, we have to look back and admit, the mistakes of the agency. Then, during that time period, they became a very bloated agency.
Right.
Just like tons and tons of redundant, unnecessary offices, remote offices, and people manning those offices, and redundant, people at headquarters and everything. Like, it was just like a bloated agency. And I think it's a matter of really it kind of slipping through the cracks, or it was just left in the care of people that didn't care.
But wouldn't that be easy to say?
Like, people outside of NASA, maybe the National Archives, you would think that, that would be handed to them,
right,
to archive. And I don't know. I think that it's regardless of what excuses I try to make for it, it's still embarrassing. Really,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the final point of it. Like, something that monumentous, and that's all you could. That's the care you could give for it.
It really does sound like a cop out. It's like, oh yeah, so we handed it over to Keith, and he doesn't really remember where he put it. It's like,
yeah.
And then that just sounds like a huge cop out. Now I have one more point. Let me make it, and then you can kind of, in summation, decide how you feel and talk more about this point. Do you have something, Megan? Sorry.
I do. Go ahead and tell us your last.
This is the last of the conspiracy theories that I am aware of.
And then I'm going to take you down another road. So let's go ahead and get yours done.
This ought to be fun. All right. So there have been several deaths surrounding the Apollo landings that skeptics have suggested might be suspicious. I read that. I tried to read that dramatically. Dramatically. All right. Now, Gus Grissom's family firmly believes that he was murdered, possibly because of his criticism of the program. Right. After the Apollo 1 fire that killed him, NASA safety inspector Thomas Barron delivered a highly critical report on the state of the program, but was killed a week later in a car accident. His report subsequently vanished, heightening suspicions of conspiracy. And that's it. So now have at it, folks.
Well, do you guys want to go ahead and let us know how you feel about, or what you believe on the subject? Did we go to the moon? Did we not?
Well, I would love to hear from you guys. I mean, all week long, send us messages and letters and things.
Well,
Via
that
owl.
too, but
We
I
like
mean,
that, but-
you, Dale, and Ryan, where do you stand on the subject?
Well, that's a difficult one to say. Ryan, you go ahead, because I feel like you had some kind of wrap up summation sort of thing, and I don't. I'm just going to be kind of freeballing it, as they say.
Well, for me, I'm sorry, let me.
That got really loud and scary.
Are you on the moon, Ryan?
Yeah, he actually went to the moon to prove everything. So,
so my final point is that yes, I believe that we did do it, that we did achieve this.
Okay.
I have done the research on all these conspiracy theories, and there is always a scientific explanation, or just really a general knowledge explanation for a lot of these conspiracies.
Yeah,
so like I said,
sure. The handling of everything that could prove the truth, though. There's not really much you can say about that. Negligence for all of that, every bit of it. You come back, like I come back from Dollywood, and I'm like, where is my cup? I want to prove that I went to Dollywood, like this was my vacation. And you want to say that we're going to be the first to go to and walk on the moon and stick a flag, and we're just going to happen to lose evidence? Now, I'm not saying I don't believe we did it. I'm only saying I dare someone to disprove that. Literally, please show me how it was done, because I think that would be the one that if you could throw out and be like, well, it makes sense why it happened, you would make most people believers again, probably. I think that's the one that's going to stop people from believing if they were to, consider that.
I think it just comes down to extreme negligence.
Okay, fair enough.
Really. And that, to be completely plain about it, that sucks. Like, really? Yeah. But that's all I can say about it. There are a lot of incompetent pieces to our government.
That's absolutely
I'll say that
true.
again. There are a lot of things about our government that are completely incompetent. Very much so today.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think what sells me on it, one is the kind of the physical explanation of how you would go about faking it, versus the technology that was available to fake it with back then.
Right.
And just what was at stake there. I think the risk, I think that we would, now I'm not saying that I would 100% bet that somebody at a boardroom meeting, when they were planning, if they have a boardroom, if there is such a thing for NASA projects, but during one of these meetings, I have no doubt that somebody would have put that on the table. Like, why don't we just film it and fake it?
Sure.
It was
absolutely
probably
possibility. Yeah.
But I think the risk was just too great to do such a thing. I think we would rather have failed, or the Russians beat us to it, than to risk really losing everything that America was about.
Wouldn't that almost be, wouldn't it have almost been better now, all these years later, if they had tried and failed? Now, it would have been saying we didn't defeat the beast, but it would say that we realize there's limitations. We have to be realistic. Kennedy said we do it, but things happen. We're human. This is outside the scope of what people have done. It would have been very human and almost smarter just to be like, the Apollo 1 was a disaster. We're just going to shelf this for a while and learn and try to get towards it later at a safer, smarter time. I think that would have been smarter. I'm not saying they didn't do it.
Look at the Cold War back then and how, I guess, heavily and seriously that was waged, though.
Sure. So politically, you're saying that
politically there was no option to just give up. I think it was either, because I think that's just as bad. If America, we've got that go-to spirit, we can achieve anything if we believe in ourselves. And,
believe to achieve.
I think that would have been, not as damning as, faking it and failing at that. But for us I think we'd rather go out swinging than to just hang up and quit on it.
But that also sort of leads to the fact that, or it leads to the belief probably that it was faked. In my opinion, that's sort of what that would lean towards. Like, we're not going to go out, not defeating this one way or the other. We're going to make it real.
So, Dale, what do you think happened?
I don't know what happened.
I need you to answer that question.
I think it is damning evidence that they lost the evidence. I think it's damning evidence that technologically, we were not even ready to do this. I think it's damning evidence that it's still a question today, and they can't prove otherwise. Again, I can prove I went to Dollywood. I know that's stupid sounding, but usually within my jokes, there's a little nugget of something. Maybe not.
Is your Dollywood cup made of petrified wood?
Maybe. But, I knew that when I was buying it. It was cheap. Expensive, but cheaply made. But the point is, there is a lot of good evidence against it, and I get why people believe maybe it didn't happen.
So what do you think happened?
I do believe we did it. Now, I don't want people to get the wrong idea here. I don't want people to believe that I just blindly believe things, because it's not like that. I didn't grow up hearing it and like, well, that's it. Must be true because I heard it.
Well, I think we've
offered enough.
We've disproved so many other things on the show that I think we've kind of proven that we're not the type that are just accepting everything.
Yeah. And that's definitely true. But I just wanted to reiterate that that's not what we're about. I think that there is enough evidence leaning towards it that it's believable. I think that there's probably more against it. Honestly, I think that's kind of where I'm feeling right now in this moment, that if you just take the evidence and you take your heart out of it and what you think we're capable of, scientifically, we probably didn't do it. It was probably filmed in a studio in Hollywood, but my heart says we did. And I guess that's the best I can offer you, because that's all we've got. Darkfall says I went to the moon and all I got was this stupid t-shirt and I lost the t-shirt. That's pretty much the story here, isn't it? Yeah, I swear I had it though. Look at the uncut footage. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think I feel the opposite way of that. I think if we did the stills, I guess I'm looking at that evidence, of what was technologically possible, like how you would do the slow motion filming and everything back then. And I think if they'd done it that way, it would have been revealed by now. So, because you've got Fox molders out there to this day that are meticulously looking over every frame by frame of everything and every photo.
Yeah. I think you're looking at the photos and the video and things of it, whereas I'm looking at the more towards that it's all missing. You know what I mean? I don't think it's necessarily we disagree on what's damning and what isn't. Like, I agree with you on the technology. Like, it would have been, I think, what we got. If it's real, I think that's what we would get. But I'm just looking, I guess, more at the things against it and trying to consider them. And I don't know. It's just, dang, it's so damning. The things against it. And then the pros for the technology, as you're referring to, are very positive, because realistically that's how it would have been and that's what you would have gotten. So it's really hard to say one way or the other. And I guess that's why we're still here talking about it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Megan, what do you think?
All right. So.
Oh, this is going to be a trip now. Let's
bear with me.
All right.
Now, you guys have talked a lot on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just want to say that it was a great conversation about conspiracy, but we're not a conspiracy show.
She is.
No. I do think we've been to the moon. However, we have completely neglected that we've quoted Buzz Aldrin a few times on this show. We've talked about Neil A, or Alien, if you put it backwards. I think we've been to the moon, but I think there was more on the moon than just dust and rocks. And I've got a video.
Well, that's not going to do us any good.
I
at
know
all.
I can't show you the video, but
This is sounding like one of those really out there conspiracy theories. It was wolves.
no, it was aliens.
I think she's referring to, and we it might have even been last week's show.
I mean, I can't believe,
Well,
Ryan,
was
that
it-
you haven't
when
brought
did
this up. We keep
when did
quoting
we
Buzz
quote
Aldrin.
that?
We've quoted him on several different episodes about how
Remember when
he saw
said, "Go ahead,
something
go ahead."
across the across the crater,
Right.
watching him, and he knew they were there watching him.
Mhm.
And
I
I've
think
got
the exact
quotes.
Quote is, "We can see them on the ridge. They're looking at us. They're just there observing."
That's the one.
Yeah.
Ryan, why have you not brought that up this entire episode?
Because
I
science.
thought you would because science. Okay. So put the science in your mind aside and let's talk about this, because he's quoted saying this, and this is the man that went to the moon. We can't ignore it. If he actually went, which
Before
I
you get
think,
on to that point,
yes.
I've always told myself, I've made this promise to me that if I ever met Buzz, the first thing I would ask him would be, "So what's the coolest thing you ever did?"
Okay.
Is that where he's going to be honest and just tell us the truth about the moon landing?
Or maybe punch me. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. Go
Okay,
ahead, man.
Well, I have some quotes from Neil Armstrong about
How is that even relevant?
okay.
We should have considered those. No, seriously, I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah. So there was an interview, and I have the transcription. He's talking to a professor, and he said, the fact is that they ordered us to turn away. They being, someone on the moon that wasn't us. And the professor says, "What do you mean warned to move away?" And Armstrong simply says, "I cannot go into details. There are structures on the moon, and not ours. I can only say that their ships were far superior to ours, both in size and technology.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, if you were big and menacing." And that's where it ended. I mean, the interview continues, but that was his only quote on being warned to move
know
away.
what those guys know.
I mean, you talked about the
What?
video where he looked uncomfortable. He looked like he wanted to say more, and he cannot.
Right.
I would love to know what he saw there.
Me too.
And I have heard, more into this conspiracy, this theory that there was more there, that there was not only, that they went to the moon, they've left the reflectors there. We can see that. That's the proof. But there also was footage filmed in a giant, what do they call them? The sound stages, for just in case backup film, in case they they filmed something on the moon that wasn't supposed to be there and they did not want seen by the American public.
Well, right on.
So we could be sitting somewhere that both realities happened.
It seems strange to me. What are the odds that they both show up? Like, it's like, oh, hey, aliens, do you come here often? We showed up at the same time. This is awkward.
I don't think it was like a rendezvous. I think that
No,
they
I
were
agree.
already there. They had the structures, is what
That's
he
what it
says.
sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's something we didn't do, and that is not good for us. That does not, that does not say that we're good hosts, because we didn't even consider the things they said about their moon landing, the guys who actually did it.
Now, I know this sounds like a little outlandish of a theory, and, we can have outlandish topics on our show, I think.
Toppings on our pizza, yes.
I'm ready for a Sunday.
The show pizza, yes.
Anyway, I think that it's crazy not to include this, considering there are comments made by the men who were there.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, if this was the case, how do you feel about somebody else being on our moon? Is that our turf? Is that still our planet? Should we be the ones getting kicked off?
I don't know. That raises a lot more questions than it answers. Definitely, no question about it. Like Darfall says, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I come out of a lot of our topics, and I feel like I know less than I went in knowing.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way ever? I swear I do. But that's good. That means we truly explored, I think, because if you go out into the woods and you truly explore them, now you may know where every tree is, but there's going to be a lot of questions. I mean, you'll just naturally want to know why things are the way they are. So when you come out the other side, you should have more questions, I think.
Yeah. You guys kind of joked that I talked about the dark side of the moon, which, Ryan, there is no dark side, I know. But the far side of the moon, that's the best place to hide from us. If they're there, we can't see them unless we go there. We go there, they say, get out. How are we going to dispute that with the technology we had in 1969?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think we all agree they were miles ahead of us. And even though this is, he liked Dark Falls.
Dark Falls likes the dark side of the moon. So, thanks, Dark Falls.
But if you turn this into an alien thing, which I guess we kind of have to, at least for a second, you just have to consider that they are miles ahead of us, whether they are us in a distant future, they're us in a different universe, or they were not us at all. They're clearly superior in every way. And they don't owe us anything.
No.
If they tell if they tell me to turn around and not film them, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So.
And there's talk about one of the other missions. I think that I don't think they ever actually landed a second time, but they got, they did the run around. Mm-hmm. They orbited the moon and came back. Yeah. And they had a video camera for it. And when they went to take video, they were trained specifically never to turn their camera toward the sun because that would burn out their lens. And that's exactly what they did within like the first 2 seconds of filming. And conspiracy theorists talk that, they did that purposefully so that you couldn't see what they saw when they started to film and realized, whoop, can't look at that. Turned it immediately to the sun.
Oh, okay. Well, neat. Apollo 12?
I think so. I didn't look that up.
13?
Immediately.
And not the one Tom Hanks took?
Yeah.
All right, anyway. I guess...
so I know I threw a major kink in your conversation.
I just say darn us
had to be included
for not talking about and giving some quotes from the men themselves. That was on us. We should have definitely done that. I think this just means that it will come back up later. This is one of those things. It's the circle of life, and it all ends with questions for now. And I guess it always will.
Well, let's just put out that tip jar and go to the moon ourselves for that.
I'm taking those tips and headed to West Virginia for some of that McDonald's pizza. All right, that will be my silly joke to transition us, I guess, away. Unless anybody has any final thoughts on this, I think we really did a number on it, and we came out again knowing less than we knew before, most likely. Maybe we know more, but we have more questions.
I think we've there'll always be questions, but I think we're all kind of decided on what we think happened.
What we think we know, yeah.
or where we stand on it.
Yeah.
It's hard to know when they get rid of the evidence.
Yeah, when Keith handles the evidence, we'll never know what happens. All right, so, well, there's that, guys and gals. Do with that what you will. And I want to thank you again for those of you who are still listening and hanging out with us. I appreciate it. I am so sorry. Again, I apologize about Wednesday's show. It's been a busy week, been on vacation. Things have been going kind of awry for us, and we're working on fixing all that back. But over the weekend, we'll try to get in the I'll Podcast on Your Grave show. We're going to do a little bit of talking about George Romero, who sadly passed away. He was considered by most the godfather of the bless you.
Let's see.
Or alien you again. But, he was kind of considered by most the godfather of the zombie movie with Night of the Living Dead in the series. So we'll try to get to that in a couple of days. And, for now, let's do our listener questions and let everybody get in the bed and try to come up with some answers, and let us know tomorrow after you sleep what answers you came up with. All right. So first question, what are your theories on ghosts of dead pets or other animals? And that comes from Jacob. Anyone want to start with that one?
You
know what? Let me real quick, just because I have a relevant story. After my cat Ozzy passed away, a couple nights later, I felt an animal. I won't say I didn't see a thing. I felt an animal like so many times every night before she passed, walk up the side of me in the bed and step onto me and then just gone. That's it. Nothing. But I felt an animal hop onto the bed. You know that feeling when like a cat or a dog, just you can feel it kind of hop on the bed. Never happened again, but I felt like it was her little way of saying, I'm fine. Don't worry about me, because I was really tore up. I love that cat. You know how it is. You love your animals. But there's mine. I absolutely believe that that there is definitely an afterlife for animals as well. Take that for what you will. I don't necessarily have a theory on it, but that's my belief.
I think when it comes down to it, and you can even make the argument for it scientifically, that we're all made of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the rules apply,
We're a ship and a soul, or whatever that may be.
I think just because an animal might not share the same level of intelligence as us doesn't discount it from having a soul,
right?
Or a chance at an afterlife, or even I don't want to put this, like having unfinished business, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and being stuck in kind of a limbo. I'm not sure what. I don't think it happens as often as we realize with other kinds of spirits.
Right.
Now I did hear a really interesting theory fairly recently. And this kind of ties into it. Are there such thing as the ghost of ancient man, like cavemen?
Sure.
Huh.
I know that sounds kind of crazy, but somebody proposed the question: what if, rather than what we're considering to be like a demon or a malevolent spirit, is really, I guess, for lack of better terms, a caveman that is essentially eternally stuck in limbo and just doesn't understand the way the world has changed around him.
Mm-hmm.
So is reacting to everything in a malicious manner.
That's why Keith lost everything. He not understand.
Like breaking things and moving furniture and physically attacking people and things. Like I thought it was an interesting way to think about it. Like, well, what if rather than what you're thinking of as a demon is really more like ancient human that just doesn't understand the world now?
I think that one's a little outlandish to me, but I mean, I think that it's possible that there are, but I don't think they would necessarily be the demon ones. I think they would just be very primitive.
I have to wonder now about Bigfoot. Are we seeing caveman ghosts out in the woods? Is that why we can't find him?
Hey, who knows?
We've talked about Stranger Things.
I think that now. I think the more that I think about it, my experience with my cat, it feels residual because it was like she was doing the same thing she did previously.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was, maybe it was something with the multiverse. It always is going to come back to that because we don't know. I mean, obviously, it's very confusing. I believe in ghosts and I believe in possibly multiple universes. I believe that they coexist. I don't necessarily think from one universe to the another would be like her and another one climbing on the bed, whereas in this one she's passed away or whatever. I'm not going to get too deep into that one tonight because we've already 40 minutes over.
Yeah.
But you get my point, as I believe they coexist. I believe things like that. So I don't know. It's a great question, Jacob.
I didn't mean to derail that, but
you're fine.
In a nutshell, I think, I do believe that, like I said before, just because your pet doesn't share the same intelligence level as you, that means they're not entitled to have a soul. So, I think really the same rules apply.
Absolutely.
But there could be residual ghosts of our pets.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's the theory that they're all around us right now. Who's to say that my cat isn't in this room and doesn't go to bed with me every night? I just can't see it, feel it, whatever anymore.
Yeah.
But who's to say that it doesn't happen? You know, maybe she's moved to a better place. Maybe she's still here. Maybe, I don't know. It's a great question, and that's definitely going to be 12 more shows. That's going to come up a lot. Darkfall says, or even strong emotions that create an imprint. Absolutely. That could play into spirituality or multiverse, or it goes, it all crosses paths, doesn't it? All right, now, here, let's move on to another one. Back in school, my friends and I would dabble in magic, like curses on people we didn't like, or good luck charms, even love spells. Oh, those love spells. I think it's a load of crap myself, mainly because I'm pretty sure our supposed expert was making things up. There are a lot of people in the world that practice it and truly believe it's real. What do you think about it? That comes from Elena or Alana from Kentucky. Well, thank you for writing in, as always. What do you guys think about that? Do you think you can just hex someone? Do you think that's a thing, or do you think it's ever been a thing?
I don't know.
I'm going to say high school wise, no, not a thing. But
no, I definitely don't necessarily believe in the magicians who do sleight of hand and stuff. However, the voodoo and the hoodoo in Louisiana scares me to pieces.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that there is some magic out there.
There's something there.
Yeah, I do.
Ryan, what do you think?
I don't want to. I wouldn't. I don't know enough to say. That's crap. What did she say? I think that's a load of crap.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that I would agree with that 100%, because I think magic is kind of a broad term, and I think when we might be crossing over into some people's religions or their religious beliefs,
right.
And I certainly don't have the authority to say that doesn't exist. But what I personally think is it's kind of the power of the human mind and how heavily or how committed you are to a belief that makes something real. I mean, we've talked in the past about, okay, if I go out into my yard and really think and hope to see a UFO or for aliens to come, am I opening up my mind to that?
Right.
Or even, speaking about...
Isn't that like from our very first show?
Yeah.
It's that circle, I'm telling you. That's the one thing I have absolutely noticed about all of our shows is there is this circle. It's a continuum where we constantly come back and things are always relevant, and they, you can talk about the birth of a pigeon and it just seems like you can talk about it from an alien angle, a religious, a political, a ghost. It's all relevant, but it's not, if that makes sense. That's what you learn on a show like this. And Dark Falls has said religion and politics have killed many a friendship. Absolutely. I personally believe you can
kill people physically as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think more people have been killed in the name of religion than anything. Doesn't make it right. I believe that science and religion and politics even should all work together. They should, or could. I won't even say they should. That's not fair for me to say. They absolutely could, but people just aren't willing to accept that things may be a little different than they thought. So what if the greatest story ever told, for example, or what if what we think we know about the moon landing, what if these things are just enough different that it doesn't work for the agenda of someone? No, that's where you get the scary parts of life, unfortunately. But I digress.
I'm going to pull you back to the question now.
Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, go ahead.
So, the point I was getting at is that I think the human mind has a lot more weight than we think in, I guess, manipulating the universe around us. So, in other words, if you believe in it that strongly, hopefully you're not cursing people or doing anything like that.
Right.
even if it's, or I guess, just to kind of wrap this up, I think that it's the strength of your belief that gives weight to what you're doing and what you believe in, magic wise.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say.
All right. Fair enough.
But yeah, I do agree that, the stuff you get into in high school, I'm going to make a love potion or what have you, or curse so-and-so by writing his name on a piece of paper and throwing chicken blood on it. I don't necessarily believe in any of that, but, and I don't know enough to really speak on it, but, they're, and I might be completely off base on this, so I apologize if I offended anybody. People of the Wiccan faith, that believe in, energies of the earth and, what you kind of put in is what you give back, your positive energies, yield positive results, I think there's kind of something there to all that. And again, I think that all comes back to how strongly you want to believe.
Yeah.
And our mind's ability to manipulate the universe around us. So,
yeah, I mean, that's possible. We have an aura and maybe that means something, maybe we can kind of control our surroundings or whatever. We're just energy. We're just power and what essentially manipulates everything in existence, energy.
I have the power.
Really, you're going to be the one to go there? Of all three of us, she's going to be the one to go there. She didn't see an episode growing up live or anything.
Yes, I did.
All right, fine. Fair enough. She's going to be the one. Well, that's a good way to go ahead and wrap it up, I think. I think we need to talk about energy and what it means to existence in general, not from a religious standpoint necessarily, but just in general. What does it mean? What reactions is it causing? That's going to be a big topic, I think. You have to consider things like that. What's making it all go? Why can I push Megan out of a chair right now? I won't, but why could I? It's the fundamentals. We got to get more into that eventually. And Darkfall says, "Wiccans."
Hey guys, press that like and subscribe button. If you want to see
punch that like button. Yeah, for 100 likes, we'll go out and go to the moon.
Yeah.
Darkfall says Wiccans have the law of 7. I think. Okay. I honestly don't know. Now there was a time where I'd actually read quite a bit about it. I think it's interesting, but I wouldn't even comment now because I don't remember, unfortunately. That'll probably come up later. Hopefully we can get a guest who can tell us about it and stuff. So that'll be fun. We are looking for guests as always. If you'd like to come on and, just talk to us about subjects and things, that's okay too. You don't have to be any kind of expert. We're certainly not. We present the facts as we know them and find them. We present the theories and, we even try to present the falsities that have been going around that might be misleading. We try to be very honest and open and fun, scientific, just real about it. We're not trying to be the guys who teach you everything, just maybe enlighten you and you can enlighten us as well. We're kind of the community show.
We're the most handsome about it too.
Well, yeah, of course, that goes without saying. Megan is very handsome.
I don't feel handsome.
Oh, you're handsome. You're a handsome lady. Remember when that was a thing?
Oh, yes.
The law of 7 is that whatever you do comes back to you sevenfold. Yeah, I believe I've heard that. That sounds totally right. I know that's very scientific on my behalf. That sounds totally legit. But yeah, I'm drained from a show. So let's wrap it up before I get any more ridiculous about it. Thanks again for everybody who's listened. Head to MidnightSpookhouse.com, Twitter at The Spookhouse, Facebook, The Midnight Spookhouse, and send us more questions. And we've not got any real experiences yet. I would love to hear any experiences you guys have had. Write it out. Send it to us.
We need to have the experiences show.
We really do. I want to have a show of experiences. We'll share ours more. Yeah,
because I think we're still kind of holding our experiences in our back pocket there.
we are. I think the one about my cat was really just my first opening up about it. like completely. And I look forward to it. It ought to be fun. So for me, I'll go ahead and say thanks again, everyone. It's been awesome. It's an honor to be in your living room or your ear with you, and you're the best. So good night from me.
Guys, thanks for listening to our crazy theories and everything for so long. We really went over tonight, but I really appreciate you being there. So thank you so much again, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah. Megan?
Thanks. Y'all have a great night.